Came out with their men and with their equipment, and they have encouraged the countries claiming to be Muslims against us. They came out to fight Islam. By the name of terrorism.
Peter Bergen, again, you've been studying this man for many years. What do you take from that?
Well, I think one thing about the statements he's been making this year is the confidence of the man. This is a man who doesn't appear to be easily intimidated. He is very confident. He's declaring war against America, and with each successive tape that appears, because it's part of a pattern of tapes that have appeared, he seems to be more personally confident.
When do you think, I mean, what's your guess in terms of when this was taped? I heard speculation today it would have been closer to the September 11th attacks rather than more recent.
Presumably, it appears to have been shot at probably somewhere in a very remote location in Afghanistan, so it would have had to be taken from that location and end up with Al Jazeera television. That would have taken some time. So I think, just my speculation, that it was probably made several days ago.
Let's talk a little bit about his background just quickly, Peter. Here we have some pictures of, these are, I'm told, family. Well, this is the group around him. Can you identify some of these people?
Well, the man who is directly to bin Laden's left, i.e. to the man directly to bin Laden's left, is a very important man. It's Ayman al-Zawahiri.
In other words, on our right, as we're looking at the picture, to his left, or
directly to his left, two in on the right, looking at the picture.
Okay.
That is Ayman al-Zawahiri. He is the head of Egypt's Islamic Jihad, which is a group that is effectively merged and is part of Al-Qaeda. He is described by a large number of people, Middle Eastern sources, U.S. intelligence officials, as really being the brains of the operation. I think one thing that was significant about the tape that Al Jazeera broadcast is that Ayman al-Zawahiri actually spoke first, almost as if he was almost in charge. And that goes with this. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this man, because he's really regarded as being the brains of the operation.
Yeah, how do you explain that? And when all the focus is on bin Laden, how do you explain what you're describing here?
Well, Ayman al-Zawahiri is somebody who's always kept in the shadows. He's only emerged publicly. He's somebody who's prized himself on being very secretive.
He's older than bin Laden.
He's 10 years older. He's almost a sort of quasi-father figure, I think, for bin Laden. He's been a professional revolutionary, if you will, since the mid-70s, when he founded Egypt's Jihad group. He was involved in the attack on the assassination of President Anwar Sadat in 1981. So he's a man who's had a long record of opposition in the United States, and in fact a lot of observers believe that he's influenced bin Laden to become more radical and more anti-American. Anything
about his remarks today that you heard that we should take note of? Or was he simply introducing?
He was setting up bin Laden, I think, but I think he's really gone public now, for a man who's kind of kept himself in the wings.
All right. Peter Bergen, who's been studying Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda network for some years, thank you again. Appreciate it. We'll see you a little bit later as well. It is now about 3 minutes after 7 in the east. We are moving into a new hour, and we want to bring you up to date on the developments as we move well into the 7th hour. Past the time these attacks started in Afghanistan. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld saying U.S. land and sea-based aircraft were joined in the attack by U.S. and British ships and submarines. This video from the Arabic television network Al Jazeera shows some of the action overnight in the skies above Kabul. Earlier today, President Bush said he gave the Taliban 2 weeks to meet specific demands, and he said none of those demands was met. In the president's words, now the Taliban will pay a price, end quote. Mr. Bush also said the world community supports his decision.
Joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds. More than 40 countries in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and across Asia have granted air transit or landing rights. Many more have shared intelligence. We are supported by the collective will of the world.
Also today, as we've just been discussing, Al Jazeera, the Arab television network, released new videotape of Osama bin Laden. It's not clear when the interview was recorded. On the tape, bin Laden says Americans will never know safety again until the U.S. changes its policies toward the Islamic world. Well, at the White House, as we've just been suggesting, President Bush front and center in announcing that the attack was underway. In fact, he was on the air less than half an hour after we got word that it was underway. CNN's senior White House correspondent John King joins us now. John.
Judy, and it was 24 hours ago that the president gave the go order, authorizing the Pentagon to launch those strikes at the moment it saw fit, at the moment those long-range bombers were in place. The president notified the congressional leadership beginning at about 7:30 last night that he had given that order. Then he went about his business up at Camp David, working on the address. You just showed a portion of it that he would give to the American people. But the president did return from Camp David to the White House this morning. Roughly 2 hours before that speech, he went into the Oval Office and he turned to his senior aide and he said, quote, "I gave them a fair warning." That a reference to the Taliban. Then Mr. Bush placed calls to more than a half dozen world leaders, giving them a heads up that military strikes were imminent. And it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the president went into the treaty room here at the White House and delivered the official confirmation to the American people and the world.
We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds. More than 40 countries in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and across Asia have granted air transit or landing rights. Many more have shared intelligence. We are supported by the collective will of the world.
The president noting in that address that this would be a long and sustained campaign. He also noted in that address that Afghanistan humanitarian aid would be underway in conjunction with the military strikes. That a bit of diplomacy by the commander-in-chief, even as he launched the military operation. Mr. Bush trying to hold the coalition together by promising there would be aid to the Afghan people, even as the government targets the Taliban and the camps of Osama bin Laden. Mr. Bush signaling that ground troops will be in this operation in the days ahead. He continues to receive updates here at the White House. Additional security precautions being taken, even though the White House says no specific or credible threats against the White House or any installations in the United States. But one of those precautions was moving the Vice President, Dick Cheney, to a secure location. But he is in constant touch with the president, also making telephone calls to other world leaders as well. Judy?
John, you make this sound very all but perfectly orchestrated by the White House, something planning in the works for weeks, days, the president setting it all in motion 24 hours ago. Is it moving like clockwork in effect for them?
Well, the White House says it is quite optimistic, quite upbeat from the initial reports back from the military as those pilots return to base, and as the reports come in, they won't have a detailed bomb damage assessment until daybreak or perhaps even longer in Afghanistan. But certainly this was well planned out. The president's contacts with key members of Congress, key leaders around the world, all part of what the White House would describe as routine notification on a day that is anything but routine. But obviously the president also making clear in that speech this will be a long and sustained campaign. The first day has gone quite well, U.S. officials believe, but they also know that there are ground troops in this campaign in the days and weeks ahead, and that it could prove troublesome. But so far, they say here, so good.
All right, John King at the White House, and we want to move directly over to the Pentagon, where our Jamie McIntyre is, a military affairs correspondent, for an update. Jamie, we're about 6.5 hours into this operation. What are they telling you?
Well, they're telling us that it's still not over. In fact, Pentagon officials are telling CNN that to expect some military action over the next few days in Afghanistan, and there are still strikes going on tonight. Let's look at what was on schedule for today. First, taking a look at the strike force, which included a pair of B-2 stealth bombers that flew from their base at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, heading over toward the region, dropping precision-guided, satellite-guided bombs, and then going on to the British base in Diego Garcia. 25 strike aircraft from the aircraft carriers Carl Vinson and Enterprise, F-18s and F-14s, attacking targets on the land. Also, the whole thing started with a volley of about 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles. They came from 2 submarines, 1 British, 1 American, and from 4 surface ships, 3 U.S. destroyers, 1 U.S. cruiser. Taking a look at what it was they were aiming for, we don't have an exact number of targets, but we do have some of the targets that they were concentrating on, first of all, surface-to-air missile sites in order to take those down, and early warning radars. That's to disable the air defenses. And then they went after training camps, and sources say that B-1 bombers, the non-stealthy bombers, used unguided munitions in carpet bombing attempts at some of those training camps. Then airfields and the aircraft on them, again to prevent the Taliban from being able to fly at all. And then perhaps significantly, what was called an area of military concentration up in the north near Mazar. We're told that there were tanks and military vehicles and presumably, of course, some members of the Taliban in that area. That's a place where the Northern Alliance had recently been engaged in fighting with the Taliban. The whole effort of this is to shift the balance of power so that the Taliban is A, on the run, and B, more vulnerable to the opposition groups that oppose them, in particular the Northern Alliance that's been fighting sort of a war of attrition there for several years. Pentagon officials say they won't really have an idea of how effective this raid has been until the daylight hours come. In just a few hours, they'll be using overhead imagery to assess the bomb damage and then calibrate what things they need to hit in addition, what things they might have to go back and strike again. Judy?
Jamie, this may be kind of a strange question, but are they confident? Are they nervous about this? They've been through military operations there before. Sometimes they've been a little bit disappointed. They haven't hit as many of the targets or as they had initially thought. What would you say
Well, I have to say that they're extremely confident, and the main reason for that is there really aren't any political considerations here that are hamstringing the military planners. This attack was so horrific, and the United States now is so galvanized that they don't have to consider so much, for instance, whether there'll be a minimum number of casualties, whether they'll have the support of countries in the region. They really feel that the bonds are off, and they can take a free hand in using, as Chairman Richard Myers said today, the full spectrum, the full power of U.S. military might to attack these terrorists and the networks that they control.
All right, Jamie McIntyre is our military affairs correspondent. He's been on station there at the Pentagon all afternoon. Joining me now to pick up on some of what Jamie was just talking about, I believe we have General Wes Clark, who's the former NATO commander. I'm sorry, my mistake. We want to take a short break. When we come back, we will talk with one of our military analysts. Just a short break, and our coverage continues. President Bush, in announcing today's strike, saying Americans feel afraid, feel, in his words, fear today. Our Gene Meserve joining me now. Gene, there's increased alert, if you will, on the part of our security.
That's right. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is urging law enforcement agencies across the country to move to their highest level of alert. They say this is a precaution. They say there is no specific threat. They put this out using the National Threat Warning System. And in our calls to local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, every indication they're being listened to. The U.S. Coast Guard, for instance, Judy, conducting 24-hour armed surveillance at 300 U.S. ports this evening.
All right, and Gene, this is something they expected to happen, but you're saying they're making a point of telling people about this.
That's right. Many of the local officials we've spoken here today have said that they had received notification from the Coast Guard, from the FBI to expect this. They had plans in place. They have instituted them. All right, Gene, I'm going to interrupt you now. Thanks very much, because we're looking at the first video that's been made available to us from the United States military. These are, we are told, cruise missiles being launched from ships in the Indian Ocean. This video provided by the U.S. Defense Department, and we are getting our first look at it ourselves. Yeah, our apologies about the breakup there, but we are literally putting this on the air just as soon as the Defense Department
is making it available to us. Our military analyst, retired General Wesley Clark, joining me. General Clark, you want to help interpret for us what we're seeing here?
Well, what we saw first, I think, was a submarine-launched cruise missile breaking out from the surface of the ocean and then igniting above. And then we saw an F-14, look like an F-14, taking off from the deck of a carrier at night. We saw its afterburners lit, the 2 engines there. So these are typical procedures. We practiced them many, many times, and I'm sure it's going well there.
What other video, if they're going to be making video available, what would you expect they might be able to provide us with?
Well, they may be able to show us some of the, what we call cockpit video, where there may be some way we can see what's actually being dropped and see the targets just before the bomb or the missile strikes. There may be a possibility of doing that. We may also be able to get some video of the Predator unmanned aerial vehicle or the other unmanned aerial vehicles as they're flying over Afghanistan.
And again, we're looking at video just released by the United States Defense Department to us. You heard General Clark say some of this is cruise missiles perhaps being launched by submarine, also seeing some F-14s taking off.
That looked like a cruise missile going off a destroyer, Judy.
I'm sorry, I appreciate the clarification. I certainly do defer to you on this information. General, while we're looking at this, I want to ask you about something Jamie McIntyre said about the high level of confidence at the Pentagon about how successful they think these strikes are going to be, that they're not hamstrung by the political problems that have confronted the United States in the past. They don't have to worry, he said, as much about civilian casualties, minimizing those. I guess my question to you is, if everything is going so well, if you were in their position, what would you be worrying about? Well,
I'd be concerned as to whether and how decisive the strikes actually are in accomplishing their purpose. We know they're not high-value targets there. The targets are important in terms of clearing the way for air power. But how much difference will they make to the outcome we're seeking on the ground in terms of breaking up the terrorist network or taking the fight to the Taliban? And so this is really the question. I also just want to raise a query, because it's clear that at some level our planners do have to be concerned about civilian casualties. We've heard all the diplomats say today that international support for this coalition will remain strong as long as we don't strike a lot of civilians. So I'd be astonished if we were not taking great care to avoid civilian casualties. I think what's different here is that the restraints that affected our operation in Kosovo are not necessarily applied. In other words, there's been more of a willingness to go after and strike the head of the government there, the command and control centers that house the Taliban. We heard that they may have struck at his house where there's a command and control center, and we didn't get to that stage in our NATO alliance for some weeks in the war. A lot of reasons for that, but in this case we have gone right after the heart of the command and control system, and that's really in accordance with U.S. doctrine. So that is reassuring, but we will always have to be careful of not striking and causing casualties among innocent civilians.
You know, I'm glad you pointed that out, General, because I noted that as well. We've been hearing all afternoon from analysts, including you, that civilian casualties is going to matter when it comes to holding any sort of coalition, particularly among the more moderate Arab nations. You say what you'd be concerned about is just how decisive this is going to be. When does the U.S. know whether it's been decisive?
May not know for a long time, but air power is, it has an effect that builds over time. And so we want to strike the targets that we've struck early to clear the way and make it safer to operate 24 hours a day at the altitudes, the time, the directions of attack that best suit our purposes. And that's the initial priority. I noticed we've also struck at our first troop concentrations, and this is very useful, because if we're going to affect the battle on the ground, we need to hit some of those troop concentrations. If we could turn to the telestrator for just a moment, Judy, I'll show you what I would be thinking about right now. And what we've got right here is the Northern Alliance, which has been talking today of working in cooperation with the U.S.-led coalition. The Northern Alliance and news reports lead us to believe that the Taliban is actually reinforcing in this area and also perhaps sending troops up into here. These may be this is the border with Uzbekistan, and these may be two of the areas where we've struck troop concentrations. We don't know that yet. But what we would be looking at then is, will the Northern Alliance, which apparently has orders to attack, move this way? Will they move this way, or both, or not at all? And it's clear that what we want to do is we want to affect the situation on the ground. This is what the Secretary of Defense made clear. We want to get this static battlefield broken up and moving and put the terrorist network at risk. And so what we'll be looking at is, how can air power help us change the nature of this battle that's right in here?
In general, very much an armchair question, so forgive the nature of it, if you will. I mean, to the untrained observer, it seems this is the world's superpower coming down with military strikes on one of the world's poorest countries. I guess my question is, why would this be difficult at all? Why wouldn't it be easy just to go in and accomplish American goals?
Well, remember first that we're really not striking the country at all. We're striking the Taliban, its military formations, and the terrorist network. Now, those military formations are by and large dispersed in the field. They've fled their barracks, no doubt. They probably evacuated the headquarters in anticipation of the airstrikes. That would be normal operating procedure for any organization. And so they're out hidden in gullies and up in caves and trying to put camouflage nets up if they have them. If they don't, they're just spreading out all over the place. And we'll have to acquire those formations. We'll have to get that information back up our chain of command and use it in planning the targets and vector in aircraft on these forces. And we'll have to do all this in real time before they can move again. And so it is a challenging procedural problem when we don't have U.S. forces in any significant number on the ground. Now, if we do have a few U.S. reconnaissance elements in there, which we don't know, but if we were, that would greatly facilitate what we're doing. But make no mistake, we clearly have the superiority on the air. It's clearly going to make a difference in the battlefield, but ultimately the men that are there in the Northern Alliance, when they fight, a lot will be riding on that fight as it's laid out right now to us.
All right, General Wesley Clark, working as a military analyst for CNN. He is, of course, the former NATO commander. General Clark, and I know we'll be coming back to you as the hours wear on this evening. Right now, for another military perspective, I'm going to go to my colleague, Wolf Blitzer. Wolf.
Judy, I'm joined by retired U.S. Air Force Major General Don Shepard, who's also a CNN military analyst. I know, General Shepard, you've been looking at that video that the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense, just released. What did you see in those pictures that perhaps our average viewer out there didn't notice?
Well, it's a Tomahawk missile, first of all, and it could come from a destroyer or cruiser, because I saw the flag above, so it wasn't a submarine as it also could have been. Some of them come from under the water, some of them come from the surface of the water, some of them come from bombers in the air. The second video was one of what appeared to me to be an F-18. Anytime military operations goes on involving the fleet, they launch air cover for the fleet. So that probably was going out to make sure that the fleet was defended against any missiles or aircraft coming in from whatever source. Standard military procedures.
What we just saw now is that Tomahawk cruise missile being launched from the sea. The weather seems to be very good right now over Afghanistan, and we're told over the next few days skies are clear. How important is the weather in these airstrikes?
The weather used to be all important, Wolf. Now it's not anywhere near as important as it used to be. In the Gulf War, we got used to watching bombs go through crosshairs on our television screen. To do that, you had to have good weather. Now we have precision-guided munitions that are guided by satellite, and they do not depend upon the weather. We can go through the weather, of course, day and night as well. So although we'd always like to have good weather because it helps you do what we call BDA, or bomb damage assessment, after the strike to see if you really hit the target you're after or if it has to be restruck.
And we're looking at live pictures right now of what's happening on the ground in Kabul. We see these live pictures that our cameras there are now sending us. A little grainy, night scope. It's just before dawn in Kabul. You know, the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, when he spoke out at the Pentagon earlier today at his briefing, he was very specific in making the point of the various targets the U.S. is going after. One of those targets he described as a command facility. I want you to listen to this little excerpt from what the Defense Secretary had to say.
We have also targeted command facilities for those forces that we know support terrorist elements within Afghanistan and critical terrorist sites.
When the Defense Secretary speaks about command facilities, at least during the Persian Gulf War, that was seen by some as a euphemism, go after the commanders and try to kill them.
Yeah, we're not going after the commanders and trying to kill them. We are going after the command and control, which is the head of the snake. Every command post has to have communications, they have war plans, and they direct their forces in the field. It's the coordination mechanism. That's what you're after. If the commander, a senior commander, if bin Laden happens to be there, unlucky.
I know that you've been spending a lot of time thinking about any search and rescue operations that may be necessary if a U.S. or a British plane goes down, pilots are missing. Show us on the map where the U.S. is prepared to assist and how they would assist in any such operation.
Yeah, well,
and on that point, I just want to point out that the Taliban is insisting they did shoot down a plane. Pentagon is denying that.
Yeah, we don't know if they've shot down a plane or not, but we must prepare the American people for that to happen down the line. We could have people killed, we could have people captured, we may lose airplanes. But basically what we're looking at is whenever we have military operations, both from the ships off the shore down here in this area, you will have airborne forces that are prepared to go rescue if you have a downed pilot. Same thing up in Uzbekistan. Wherever we are, these people are on the alert and sometimes airborne whenever you have strikes going on. Immediately when a person ejects from his airplane or goes down, you want to find out where he is on the ground, you want to make sure it's him, and then you go get him. They have covert means and overt means to go get him, but we are really on top of rescuing our forces whenever and wherever they are. We take care of our people, our military people.
The 1,000 members of the 10th Mountain Division who are being moved to Uzbekistan, to that former Soviet base there, would they be part of such an operation?
Well, the soldiers in Uzbekistan are part of the initial ground troops in the area. We've been told there are 1,000 there. Of course, the division has many more than that, and perhaps we'll see follow-on forces. But they are not normally used for rescue. For rescue, we are using special operations forces, and we also have specially trained rescue forces that work with the special operators. Your special operators are then protected by airborne fighters and that type of thing, and communicators in an orchestrated effort. It's like orchestrating a ballet when someone goes down to go in and get them.
All right. Tony Blair, like the U.S. officials, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, when he spoke out about an hour or so after President Bush spoke out, once again insisting the U.S. and the British forces are trying to avoid civilian casualties. Listen to this brief excerpt from Tony Blair.
The military action we are taking will be targeted against places we know to be involved in the al-Qaeda network of terror or against the military apparatus of the Taliban. This military plan has been put together mindful of our determination to do all we humanly can to avoid civilian casualties.
General Shepard, first of all, show us on the map some of the targets that were hit by the U.S. and British airstrikes, and how do they go about and try to avoid civilian casualties in largely populated areas?
You bet. It's a tough problem. First of all, what we've heard has been hit today is Kabul. We've heard that Jalalabad, Kabul, Kunduz, Kandahar, Herat, and perhaps Mazar-Sharif, targets have been hit in all those areas. There are civilians in all of those areas, but what we are after is the military things that are there, the missile sites, the storage facilities, the communications facilities. We hope civilians are not there, but when we plan these strikes, we run computer models. We decide what direction to come in from, what weapon to use, how deep to dig with the weapon, how to fuse it, all designed to minimize what we call collateral damage. And sometimes we put our air crews, our pilots, at significant risk where instead of coming in from one direction, they have to come in from another to avoid civilian casualties. It's a part of modern warfare, Wolf.
But modern warfare also includes some technological failures that occasionally do happen, and civilians are going to be killed.
It does. There is no such thing as a war in which civilians have not been injured. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. You can be sure that it won't be by design. We will not attack innocent civilians, and we'll do everything we can to avoid those casualties. Some of it will happen. We need to be prepared for it.
And as all of us remember, sometimes a cruise missile is errant, goes to a different location than it's supposed to go to. General Shepard, we're going to leave it right there. We'll be back. Stay with us. Back to you, Judy.
Thanks, Wolf. That question of civilian casualties is one we keep coming back to throughout this afternoon. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to look at opinions inside Afghanistan, as we can guess them given today's attacks, and opinions inside the United States. Just after 7:30 Eastern Time in Washington, these are pictures, live pictures from Afghanistan. We believe this is an area near Kabul. It is 4 o'clock in the morning, just after 4 o'clock in the morning in Afghanistan, a sign of the U.S.-led strikes continuing in that country in Western Asia. Here, just to look quickly at the latest developments while we watch these live pictures. Military forces from the United States and Britain have been attacking targets in Afghanistan as part of the new international campaign against terrorism. Opening salvos were fired just 7 hours ago as nightfall set in over that country. The Pentagon says the targets include air defenses, terrorist training camps, and strategic military targets linked to Afghanistan's Taliban rulers. After returning to the White House from Camp David, President Bush addressed the American people. He said the attacks were launched after the Taliban refused to meet U.S. demands to turn over suspected terrorists. Mr. Bush said the Taliban will pay a price for their refusal. He said the operation also will have a humanitarian component, with the U.S. dropping food, medicine, and supplies to needy Afghan people. The Taliban's ambassador to Pakistan is blasting the military action. He calls the strikes horrendous terrorist acts, and he says the military action will unify the whole Afghan nation against the United States and its coalition partners. Well, some of those pictures we were just showing you of the early form of the military strikes launched by the U.S. Came in to us just moments ago. Our military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre, joining us now from the Pentagon. Jamie, what are they telling you about what we were just looking at?
Well, those are some of the first pictures that were sent back. These were sent back actually by a computer. They were emailed back. If you're familiar, anybody out there in the computer world familiar with an MPEG file, these were actually digital, reduced to digital and sent back. You saw there a cruise missile taking off from one of the 4 surface ships. This is the control room inside the ship where they launched the cruise missiles. Again, about 50 cruise missiles fired, 4 from surface ships, 4 surface ships involved, also 2 submarines, 1 American and 1 British. Also involved were 25 strike aircraft from the aircraft carriers Carl Vinson and USS Enterprise. And among the video that was released today also was an F-18 taking off from the deck there. But what we have not seen yet is the results of any of those strikes. You mentioned some of the targets, airstrips and airplanes, training camps, air defenses, surface-to-missile sites, surface-to-air missile sites, early warning radar, and an area of military concentration, we were told. It included some Taliban tanks and other military equipment up in the north in an area where they had been engaging the Northern Alliance. That again intended to give the Northern Alliance some military advantage. These strikes, we're told, will go on for a few days at least, although they may not be the same, quote, level of effort they referred to here as they had on the first day. But this is not over by any means, although the Pentagon is getting ready to sort of pack it in for the night. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld will be going back to his home as the daylight hours approach in Afghanistan. And the Pentagon says they will have more information tomorrow about the effectiveness of the strikes once during the daylight hours they are able to get some overhead imagery and take a look at the effect that they've had so far. Judy?
Jamie, does that mean we can expect the strikes to pretty much stop or slow down at least during the daylight hours and then pick up again in the evening, presumably?
Well, there's certain kinds of aircraft the United States doesn't like to use in the daylight hours, such as the big B-2 stealth bomber, which isn't nearly as stealthy when it can be seen in the daylight. But the U.S. is expecting that by tomorrow they'll pretty much have mastery of the skies, air superiority over Afghanistan, and will be able to fly combat aircraft without much of a threat from air defenses on the ground. So we could see activity in the daytime as well.
All right, Jamie McIntyre from the Pentagon. And now joining us on the telephone, CNN's Kamal Haider. He is on the ground in Afghanistan. And Kamal, as usual, we don't want to say where you are on the ground, but tell us what you were seeing, what you've learned.
Well, I've just learned from our people in Kandahar, from the CNN people in Kandahar, that Kandahar is again under attack, that at least 4 to 5 explosions have been heard, and that the attack is once again on Kandahar, and this would probably be the fourth attack tonight on Kandahar.
Any specifics at all, Kamal, in terms of what is being targeted in Kandahar and the area around it?
Well, so far it is quite clear that all the targets being hit are basically military. No civilian targets have been hit so far in Kandahar, and that has been confirmed by our sources. However, it is now 10 past 4 here in Afghanistan in the morning, and it's still dark. So it is not clear what sort of damage must have been done in the last few attacks. That assessment will probably start filtering in once daylight returns to Kandahar and Jalalabad and all the cities that have been hit overnight.
Kamal, we know you must be exhausted because you've been up this entire night reporting almost steadily for CNN. As you just said, it's 8.5 hours from East Coast time to Afghanistan. So as you said, it's 10 after 4 in the morning. We know there's an air base near Kandahar. Any other military targets of note in that area?
Yes, basically there is a military cantonment also. There are military bases on the outskirts of the city as well, and obviously key priority military concentrations, some sort of military bases on both sides of the city, towards Herat as well as towards the airport.
Any reports you're getting from anywhere, Kamal, from anywhere else in the country?
We had a report a few hours ago. It was possibly, in Jalalabad, that there was a big attack in Jalalabad as well, and that several targets were being hit in Jalalabad as well.
All right, we're going to let you go, Kamal, unless there's something else that you'd like to point out.
No, that's all. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna let you take a break and continue your reporting. As we said, it is 8.5 hours difference, so it's a little after 4 in the morning there in Afghanistan. Joining us now, someone who knows of the Afghan people. His name is Omar Samad. He is the executive director of Afghanistan Information Center and executive producer of Azadi Afghan Radio. He was born in Afghanistan and raised there, but came to the United States in 1980 as a political refugee. We just heard, I want to ask you, Mr. Samad, we heard the Taliban ambassador to Pakistan quoted as saying, this military action led by the U.S. will unify the whole Afghan nation against the United States. Is he right?
Well, I guess that's what you call political rhetoric at this point. The Taliban really do not have much more to say. I do not think that the Afghan people and those who oppose terrorism and Taliban's harsh and very un-Islamic and un-Afghan way of ruling over the country will prescribe to that. The Afghans are really tired and very much in anticipation of seeing some change on the ground politically. They would like the Taliban to go. And they do understand, I believe, except for maybe a very small minority of people who, for some reasons of interest, follow the Taliban or support the Taliban. The majority of Afghans do know that the Taliban over the past 6-7 years have really brought nothing but misery and the situation where Afghanistan is now targeted. So they would like to see them go.
We've been spending a fair amount of time this afternoon, Mr. Samad, talking about civilian casualties and the support that the United States can count on if there are a high number of civilian casualties. How much do you think that is going to have a bearing on what support that we can count on the Taliban losing, if you will?
Well, obviously, if there is civilian collateral damage and casualties and the numbers grow and the targeting is not precise, then obviously some people will start questioning the motivations. But we are pretty confident that is not going to happen. We think that the military action is to target the terrorist infrastructure and the Taliban installations, and that the civilians will be spared. At the same time, the resistance that goes on inside Afghanistan will be given a chance to advance. I think that resistance obviously has to be accompanied by a political sort of coalition coming together in order to replace the Taliban, which is a major factor that will be coming into play in the days ahead.
And who are the critical pieces of any coalition that would be successful?
Well, there are the internal pieces where you have the Northern Alliance or United Front resistance forces scattered around the country, mainly in the north and northeastern parts. But then you also have newly emerging resistance forces against the Taliban in the southern and eastern parts of Afghanistan. The latest news that we heard is that there is an uprising in the western part of Afghanistan near the Iranian border against the Taliban. I think that in the days to come you will hear...
You mean something new?
Yes, this is something new that near the border with Iran, inside Afghanistan, in the province of Herat, in the past couple of hours, there are reports of popular uprisings. There are a lot of people who are armed in Afghanistan who have been waiting for this day in order to take advantage of at least air cover from outside in order to retaliate against the Taliban and the terrorists. I think that you will see that over the next few days also in the eastern and southern parts of Afghanistan, and maybe even in some cities like Kabul. But then on the outside, you have elements on the outside who will also be instrumental in bringing about some kind of political change. And those are the countries that are involved, especially Pakistan. And as you and your reporters have told us in the past few days, Pakistan has shifted almost 180 degrees in the past few days away from the Taliban, and now is talking about bringing about some kind of change. What is important is to see how sincere Pakistan is. I think that the Afghans have seen that the Pakistani policy in the past has failed in supporting the Taliban, and would like to see sincerity in the Pakistanis' approach toward Afghanistan.
And very quickly, the role of the exile king?
Absolutely critical. I think that all elements inside Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan, including the former king, who can be a rallying point and a national symbol, is critical to bring about positive change in Afghanistan.
All right, joining us, Omar Samad with the Afghanistan Information Center and with Azadi Afghan Radio. This is a radio network broadcasting in several U.S. cities like Washington, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and others. Thank you very much, Mr. Samad. Nice to see you. We appreciate you joining us. We're going to take another short break. When we come back, we hope to have a look at U.S. opinion as these airstrikes get underway. As the U.S.-led military operation against Afghanistan gets underway, and we're now a little more than 7 hours into it, Americans naturally are asking, will there be retaliation? It's an understandable question, and for more on just how much the U.S. government is thinking about that, let's bring in our Jean Meserve. Jean.
Judy, the FBI is urging law enforcement agencies across the country to move to their highest level of alert. They say this is a precaution. They say there is no specific threat. They use their national threat warning system to put this information out. They asked law enforcement agencies to evaluate whether additional local security measures are warranted. They also said that each of its offices, the FBI's offices, would remain on the highest alert indefinitely. It says the around-the-clock effort is continuing with renewed investigative tasking consistent with the current threat level, which is, of course, very high. And there is every indication that law enforcement around the country is responding to the FBI warning. The U.S. Coast Guard now says it is conducting 24-hour armed surveillance in more than 300 U.S. ports. It is the Coast Guard's largest port security operation since World War II and involves everything from armed cutters out on the water to shore-bound security personnel. The Coast Guard also has increased from 51 to 72 the number of security zones it's established around nuclear power plants, fuel facilities, and other sorts of critical infrastructure. Security concerns caused the Maryland State Police to shut down a major highway north of Washington for a while this evening. They brought in some bomb-sniffing dogs to check out two suspicious Ryder trucks. Nothing was found, but state police say that investigation is continuing. In Boston, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, more police are being put on the street and will be kept there for the time being. Philadelphia had hundreds of police, including including 2 bomb squads on duty because of a football game and a couple of parades. They were all diverted downtown after the U.S. military went into action. They were sent there to protect high-rise and high-profile buildings in Philadelphia. Police in Philadelphia and several other cities and states tell us that they have not received any specific credible threats, but federal law enforcement had made them well aware of the possible risk of retaliation long before today's airstrikes, so many had response plans ready. In Baltimore, that included putting extra security around mosques and synagogues, as well as around key infrastructure. There are some states and localities who tell us they have made no security adjustments today, that they already were taking every precaution, among them Florida. But Governor Jeb Bush did issue a statement saying it is time for us to unite against the enemies of freedom and ask God to give wisdom and strength to our president. The president, of course, his brother, George W. Bush. Judy?
So, Jean, this is really something. I mean, some of this is a national effort, but a lot of this is really on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the city or the state feels is the threat.
Absolutely. The localities are the first responders. If anything happens, they're the ones who have to get there first. Here in the District of Columbia, where there's a special situation because there are so many different jurisdictions, they've set up a special command center. We're looking at some pictures of it there. That's going to allow D.C. to coordinate with the FBI and the Secret Service, the Park Police, everybody involved in this city. Of course, it's an exceptional effort here in Washington, D.C. because it is a federal city, but there is this sort of communication taking place between local and state officials and the federal government all across the country. Judy?
All right, Jean Meserve, thanks very much for that comprehensive look at just how much more preparedness we have right now. Thank you, Jean. Joining me now, CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider for a look at where the country may be, where Americans may be as they consider what has gotten underway today. Bill, I know you've been looking at poll numbers for some days. Given what you know at this point, are Americans likely to be on board with the president?
Absolutely. This country is about as unified now as we've ever seen. I mean, support for the military action is well above 90%. Very small number oppose it. Remember, the United States was attacked in a way that we've never been attacked in our history, and that's built up tremendous support for this military effort. In the future, however, there are some serious questions. How much is necessary to call this a victory? What will be the end product of all this? And of course, what is sufficient? Will Americans be willing to go beyond the obvious targets, Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda and its terrorist network, and the Taliban regime in Afghanistan? Those are some big questions for the future.
And Bill, what could the administration have done today that would have, in your view, further shored up support, or do you think they've just basically done everything right here?
I believe they have done everything right. They've been very careful even to mollify critics by saying we're not at war with Afghanistan, we're certainly not at war with the Muslim religion or Islam. We are sending aid to make it clear to the Afghanistani people that we are trying to save them from the repressive regime that they're suffering under, the Taliban regime. Our targets are clearly Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, the terrorist network, and the Taliban regime. Almost all Americans support that, and the coalition in support internationally is very, very powerful. But, number one, what's necessary? I think a victory over those forces will be absolutely necessary for the Bush administration to say we've won. Americans have a face in this war. The face of the enemy is Osama bin Laden. That's very tricky to capture this one person. That's going to be hard, probably harder than overthrowing the Taliban regime. But that is necessary to say that we've succeeded in our objectives. However, will it be sufficient? The president, in his speech to Congress, and again this morning, said we expect a larger effort beyond those immediate goals to try to cut off global terrorist networks worldwide. And what we're finding in the polls is Americans are really divided over that larger effort. Once we've gotten the perpetrators of the September 11th attacks, eliminated them or brought them to justice, will there be support for a wider effort? We simply don't know. But part of the answer is going to be, is there going to be a continuing threat of terrorist activity against the United States once that objective is met? Judy?
So, Bill, just quickly, the American people on board now, evidently, but there are some serious questions out there about the extent to which they'll stay on board depending on how this unfolds.
how it unfolds. And also, Americans, I think, will put up with losses, setbacks. They're going to be very patient. I think the American people are very patient. The press is a little less patient, but the people are very patient in this. They are determined. The question is, if this becomes terribly political, if the coalition begins to fall apart, if it looks like we're undertaking too much political activity instead of military activity, well, the record shows Americans don't have a great deal of tolerance for political wars.
All right, Bill Schneider, our political analyst, joining us now from Los Angeles. And Bill, you are so right. The American people may be patient, but when it comes to the press, we're asking questions after questions, and we want answers right now. I'm Judy Woodruff in Washington. Coming up in just a moment, The Point with Greta Van Susteren, and we'll start that off with an update on America Strikes Back. Hello, I'm Judy Woodruff in Washington. This is America Strikes Back, CNN's continuing coverage of the anti-terrorism coalition strikes inside Afghanistan. The United States and British military attack against the al-Qaeda network and Taliban militia began just after nightfall Sunday in Afghanistan. Flashes of light and anti-aircraft fire were seen outside Kabul. The Ministry of Defense building in Kabul reportedly was hit. A senior Taliban official told CNN that the command system and radar system at the Kandahar airport also had been destroyed. In addition to Kabul and Kandahar, other targets were Jalalabad in the east and a number of towns in the north. Intelligence sources with the opposition Northern Alliance report that at least 7 different locations were struck. President Bush returned to the White House about 2 hours before announcing that the attacks had started. When he addressed the nation at 1 p.m. Eastern, the president emphasized Afghanistan's Taliban rulers are the targets of the attacks, not the Afghan people.
More than 2 weeks ago, I gave Taliban leaders a series of clear and specific demands. Close terrorist training camps, hand over leaders of the al-Qaeda network, and return all foreign nationals, including American citizens unjustly detained in your country. None of these demands were met. And now, the Taliban will pay a price.
Several hours after President Bush spoke, an Arab TV news network broadcast a videotaped interview with Osama bin Laden. While it's not clear when the interview was conducted, bin Laden hailed actually it was more of a statement than an interview, but he hailed the September 11th attacks on the United States, saying God is giving the Americans, quote, what they deserve. He thanked God that America is, in his words again, filled with fear from the north, south, east, and west. And bin Laden characterized the global alliance against terrorism as a war against Islam.
I say these events have split the whole world into 2 camps, camp of belief and a camp of disbelief, so that every Muslim should come out to fight for his religion. The winds of change has been blowing now. And to America I say to it, and to its nation, I swear by God, America shall never enjoy, nor those who live in America will never enjoy peace unless we enjoy it in Palestine and before all the disbelievers leave our holy land.
Despite a quick Taliban claim that its forces shot down one of the attacking aircraft, U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld told reporters a few hours ago that at that point no U.S. aircraft had been hit. The strike was carried out by 15 U.S. land-based bombers as well as 25 strike aircraft plus U.S. and British ships and submarines firing cruise missiles. Among the arsenal were B-2 stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri with satellite-guided munitions. U.S. B-1 and B-52 bombers from the British base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean also took part in the raids. Both aircraft used precision-guided munitions and more conventional so-called dumb bombs. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says the attacks will continue, but he warned that there is no silver bullet and no single thing that will make the threat of terrorism disappear.
The only way to deal with these terrorist threats is to go at them where they exist. You cannot defend at every place, at every time, against every conceivable, imaginable, even unimaginable terrorist attack. And the only way to deal with it is to take the battle to where they are and to root them out and to starve them out by seeing that those countries and those organizations and those non-governmental organizations and those individuals that are supporting and hiring, harboring and facilitating these networks stop doing it and find that there's a penalty for doing it.
Joining me now from Capitol Hill, House Minority Leader Dick Gephardt. He learned of the impending attacks last night in a telephone call from President Bush. Mr. Gephardt, the president called you about 7 o'clock Eastern Time. You were at an Orioles game in Baltimore. What did he say?
Well, he said that these attacks would take place. We've had conversations with him about it before and his people. He said he'd give a speech to the country this afternoon, which he did. And I told him we were praying for him and our troops, and we knew that this would have to be, over time, a success, and we believe it will be.
What is your sense of how it's going so far?
Well, this is the first stage, Judy, of a long campaign, as Don Rumsfeld has said and the president has said. This is just the first step of many steps. There are also political, diplomatic, and financial steps that we're taking. And a lot of the military effort will have to be very focused, very surgical, and including paramilitary and other kinds of covert efforts to get at the folks who have been perpetrating this violence. This is a very complicated foe, and it's going to take a very complicated, long-run response to get this done.
Any doubt in your mind that U.S. ground troops will be involved?
Well, in a very limited way. Again, I think small groups, paramilitary, trying to find these people. This is not going to be the Persian Gulf War. This is not going to be Bosnia or Kosovo. It's not going to be big ground troop invasions into Afghanistan. That's what they'd like us to do. That's what we won't do. But it will be a different kind of warfare for a very different kind of war and a different kind of challenge than we've ever faced.
To what extent is the Democratic Party on board in supporting what the Bush administration is doing?
I think Democrats are on board with Republicans. I think we're really all Americans. We want to prevent further attacks. That's what this is about. This is not revenge. We're not after people in Afghanistan. We're not after, certainly, Islamic people and religion. We are trying to prevent further attacks. These are fanatic extremists. They are not true to the beliefs of Islam and the Muslim religions. And we've got to root them out, bring them to justice, and then carry out long-term programs, both here and abroad, that will diminish the army of terrorists, not increase it. That's why this has to be done carefully and in a new way.
Congressman Gephardt, does the president, in essence, does the administration have a blank check to do whatever it needs to do to carry out this military campaign successfully? From the Congress, I mean.
Well, Judy, there's never a blank check for anybody in our country. You have to act responsibly. You have to check with everybody, and that's been done throughout. We've had lots of open communication. We agree with the strategy that's being implemented now, and we hope and believe it will continue to be a wise and intelligent strategy. We need it to be. We need to be unified. We need to have resolve. We need to work together. The whole country's been threatened. Our people have been threatened in a way that probably we've never been before, and we've got to stick together and work together to do the right things to bring this to an end.
To what extent are you concerned about civilian casualties?
Well, you're always worried about follow-on attacks. We've got to be vigilant. We've got to be careful. We're at a high security level now here and across the country. That's the way it ought to be. But by the same token, we've got to resume normal life. People can't go into their homes and, you know, not go out and work and go to school and all the things that we do. If we do that, we'll really be giving in to the thing that the terrorists really want to achieve, which is scaring us all to death. We can't do that. It's almost our patriotic duty to resume normal life, be careful, do good things for security, which we're doing with law enforcement, and I think we can avoid further attacks.
And I'm glad you addressed the question of security here in the U.S. In the event of a retaliation. What I also want to ask you about are civilian casualties in Afghanistan.
Oh, I understand. I don't think that there's going to be that. I think the military is trying very hard to not have collateral damage. And as you know, we're simultaneously introducing food supplies into the country. A lot of people are starving there. A lot of people have had difficulties for a long time. That will be added to by this, I'm sure. We've got to tell the people of Afghanistan this is not against them. It's not against Islam. It is against the fanatical extremists who have practiced their hatred not only here but across the world in the last years.
And finally, how hard will it be to keep this coalition together?
Well, I think we can do it. It will be difficult. It's going to take a lot of work on the part of our country, our administration, our people. But we've got a lot of good friends: Britain, France, Canada, Australia, and many countries in the Middle East that are really in a very tough position. But they have stood up with us in this coalition. It's like anything in teamwork. You got to work with the team. It's me to we every day. Try to pull together everybody in a unified effort, not only here but abroad. I think we can do this. I think we have to do it. I think we will do it.
All right, House Minority Leader Dick Gephardt joining us from the United States Capitol. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I'll be back at the bottom of the hour with another update, but right now let's go to my colleague Greta Van Susteren. Greta.
Thanks, Judy. We have seen pictures of him before, but today was the first time many of us have heard Osama bin Laden's voice, and through a translator heard him threaten the U.S. In a minute, we will take a closer look at who Osama bin Laden is and what makes him hate the U.S. so much. He swears that neither America nor those who live in it will know security. Why does Osama bin Laden hate America so much? Joining me here in Washington are CNN terrorism analyst Peter Bergen and Georgetown University professor Rob Sahani. Rob, first to you, why does he hate the U.S. so much?
Greta, I think Osama bin Laden gets his legitimacy and power from being anti-American. Saddam Hussein did this very effectively in the 1990s. By being the only Arab leader in the Muslim world to stand up to America, he portrayed himself as the champion and therefore gained legitimacy in the eyes of the Arab world, and that's exactly what Osama bin Laden is doing today.
Peter, he released that statement today, which seemed to coincide with the attack on Afghanistan today, or the Taliban. Was that done before or after the strikes, do you think?
Well, my impression is that tape was made sometime between September 11th and today. Obviously, it referred to the strikes. Bin Laden himself mentioned the large buildings that were attacked, but it must have been made somewhere in a remote location in Afghanistan and then had to transfer to Al Jazeera television. That would have taken some time. So my impression is that they would have been made in the last several days, perhaps.
Peter, what's the strategy of releasing this?
There have been multiple releases of tapes by bin Laden in the recent, in about the last year or so. One thing is he well understands how the Western media operates. We all need pictures to explain the story. It's a way of getting his message out in a sort of unmediated fashion. CNN and other news organizations have played that tape, and it's a very effective way for him to get his message out.
Rob, you think it's a good strategy with his followers? Is he gaining more momentum?
I think the timing from the perspective of Osama bin Laden is excellent. What he's trying to do is pit the United States against the Muslim world. he as the vanguard of the Muslim world against the United States. Today, he personally attacked President Bush. If you look at his comments, it's very, very clear he's including the Palestinian issue into this. What he's trying to do is create excitement, create fans, more fans for himself in the Arab street, in the Arab Muslim world.
How many fans, though, does he have, Rob? We've seen so many refugees leave the country of Afghanistan. How big are the numbers?
Greta, you touched on something very important. He has no fans among the people of Afghanistan. And that's where we need to start the process of dehumanizing Osama bin Laden and taking the message that the people of Afghanistan have, which is get out of our country, get out of our lives. We need to start mobilizing Afghans to start burning the effigy of Osama bin Laden. Project that into the Muslim world, because we need to start dehumanizing this guy, because dead or alive, we do not need a martyr.
But Peter, he does have some allies, at least in Afghanistan. He has some protection. You've been there, Peter. About how many people does he have around him that are protecting him?
Well, we know that in the immediate group around him, there's a group of people who've sworn allegiance to him, and that's at least several hundred. There's been a group of about 400 men fighting alongside the Taliban as sort of conventional forces. So you're looking at a group that ranges between several hundred and the low thousands of people who are, let's say, his more committed followers.
Do we have any idea how big the Taliban is, though, Peter? I mean, to get the sort of sense of the numbers.
Western diplomats in Pakistan estimate the Taliban to be somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 men. The Taliban themselves have said that they can recruit more people at this moment. I think that may be wishful thinking on their part.
Peter, before we saw on the speech by bin Laden today, we saw someone else speak. Who was that, and why is he important?
The gentleman that we saw alongside bin Laden is Ayman al-Zawahiri, who plays a critical role in al-Qaeda, bin Laden's organization. Ayman al-Zawahiri is about 10 years older than bin Laden, has been involved in terrorism since 1973 when he founded Egypt's jihad group. He's widely regarded both by American intelligence and by Middle Eastern sources of various description, and people familiar with the organization as really bin Laden's brain. So I thought it was very significant today that he actually led off this tape, and in a way he's kind of come out into the public with this tape, and we're going to hear a lot more of Ayman al-Zawahiri, I think, in coming days.
Rob, al-Zawahiri has been rather quiet, at least seemingly so, in the background. Do you find it significant that he appeared on this tape with bin Laden?
Possibly coming out as a successor to bin Laden. Maybe bin Laden figures that if indeed his days are numbered, he will want to have his lieutenant known to the Arab world. And this might be the beginning of the reign of Mr. al-Zawahiri.
And Peter, now what's next for bin Laden, do you think?
Well, bin Laden's had a lot of time to think out what his responses are. Clearly, September 11th was not something that was a surprise to him. We know that, I think, for two reasons. First of all, we've had this tape that has been shown, which implies that he's thought out possible responses in the sense that he knew this tape would get a wide showing. Secondly, with the death of Ahmad Shah Massoud, assassination probably by bin Laden's men 2 days before the World Trade Center attacks, it's clear that bin Laden had a plan. By eliminating Massoud, that was the most effective leader of the Northern Alliance, who's now joined forces with the American-led coalition. So I think bin Laden has had a lot of time to think out his responses. The question of what they are exactly will remain to be seen, but I can say that we know that the group has Stinger missiles, the most effective handheld anti-aircraft missile in the world, and the group has experimented in a kind of low-key kind of way, or amateur kind of way, with chemical weapons and made attempts to buy nuclear material. I'm not suggesting those have been weaponized, but I'm saying that this is a man who is on the record as saying that he's seeking to acquire chemical, nuclear, and biological weapons, and his words have been the best roadmap to his actual actions in the past, Greta.
All right, Rob, what do you think the strategy is going to be with bin Laden?
Whatever the strategy is, I think the strikes today, Greta, are the beginning of the end for Osama bin Laden. I think the people of Afghanistan now realize that the United States is going in to liberate Afghanistan, and that's the key word. We're going in to liberate, and I think the people of Afghanistan, the Northern Alliance, will unite under Mohammad Zahir Shah, and eventually, sooner rather than later, we will see the end of the Taliban and the beginning of a new era for Afghanistan.
All right, Peter Bergen, Rob Sahani, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
The U.S. military is doing two things at once, attacking the Taliban and providing humanitarian relief to Afghanistan's refugees. We will look at that assignment when we come back. This is a war unlike any other. There is no big army to fight, just a group of shadowy terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan and the Taliban militia that has been running the country. How does the U.S. military lead a global alliance against them? Joining me is CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Major General Don Shepard. General, thank you for joining me this evening. I want to talk about the Tomahawk cruise missile. I want to find out how big this is. How long are these things?
It's not real big. Think of an oxygen cylinder, about 20 inches in diameter. Think of that coming out of a tube, wings springing out of it, a motor igniting, and it's on its way like a model airplane that weighs about 3,000 pounds.
How far can you send those things?
Well, you can send a max range is probably in the neighborhood of around 1,000 miles. So you can get way offshore. You can launch them from submarines. You can launch them from surface ships. You can also launch them from aircraft.
How fast?
Well, it's subsonic. The exact speed is classified, but it's subsonic, and so it can be shot down. So that's one of the reasons it goes in low altitude, and also night is a protection for it. You saw during the Gulf War the Iraqis shooting at it all the time, and the Afghans will be doing the same thing.
How fast can it actually go, though, the speed?
Well, when I say subsonic, probably top speed is around 400, 450 miles an hour would be top speed from a thought standpoint.
What's the advantage of the cruise missile?
The advantage of the cruise missile is that there's no person in it, so you're not risking a pilot. And the other thing is it's very small. It's hard to see on the radar, has a very small what we call cross-section, and it also is very hard to hit when you're shooting at it because it operates at low altitude. So it makes it a formidable weapon.
How do you actually guide it?
Well, there's several ways. One is what we call scene matching. You take pictures from satellites, and then it matches the satellite pictures to where it is on the ground. Another one is what we call INS, or Inertial Navigation System, gyros, self-contained, and another one is with Global Positioning Systems. All three are ways they can do it, and they're improving that all the time, which improves the accuracy.
Cost?
Figure $1 million a pop is probably good. Now, the actual purchase price around $600,000, but when you put in everything, probably around $1 million is what you're looking at. Expensive.
When you put in everything, what do you mean? What are the accessories we get with it?
Yeah, when we talk about support, we talk about the gasoline, the people, the storage, maintaining it, all the trail that goes with it. So it's not just purchasing the weapon itself. There's a lot of other things included in it as well.
How powerful? What can it do when it strikes something?
Well, think of about 1,000-pound warhead, and also the capability to change the warhead to submunitions or small cluster bombs that can be dumped out of it. So you can send it in a level and you can dump cluster bombs to get personnel in the open if that's what you're after, or you can also put a warhead about 1,000 pound, and now there's some larger warheads coming as well, and it goes up and then dives into the target. That's the kind of the thought process that you use.
When do you decide whether or not you can use a cluster bomb or not?
Well, it depends on the target you're after. If you're after troops in the open, if you're after buildings that will burn, that type of thing, if you're after stuff that fragmentation will work, then that's what when you use a cluster bomb. If you're looking at blowing something up or digging a deep hole or going after something that's buried in the ground, you want the large warhead.
How many did the U.S. use today?
50 is what we heard reported from the Pentagon, so you can think about $50 million.
How many does the U.S. actually have? Do you know that?
I don't know how many they have, but it would be in the hundreds. We won't run out, and they can be manufactured now very quickly if we need more.
What do you mean quickly? How fast can the U.S. make a cruise missile?
This is something we deal with all the time. As far as from when you start to when the missile is finished, it's probably in the neighborhood of a 3 or 4 months if you look at a single missile. But we can gear up quickly to have our industrial partners, and we've already done that. When this kicked off, we went with all of our manufacturing partners for spare parts and everything that we're using, and they're gearing up to rapidly contract and rapidly produce for us. So we can keep up with the
Okay, say 3 to 4 months. With all that partnership, what can you get that 3 or 4 months period down to?
My guess is you can probably get it down to a couple of months.
And in terms of, we use these in the Gulf War, or the United States used these in the Gulf War, have they changed in 10 years?
They have changed. The guidance system have changed, the weapons have changed, they've got bigger warheads available to them, so it's much more accurate, and it's also longer range. We learned a lot from the Gulf War.
Any disadvantage to these?
Well, the disadvantage is the accuracy. It's not as accurately as a laser-guided weapon, and of course you have malfunctions in these. So the disadvantage would be if you really wanted to be sure and hit something, you would use a global position system, a GPS-guided weapon, or a laser-guided weapon, which would be more accurate. But you're talking in the neighborhood of a very few feet with a 1,000-pound bomb. So they're very accurate. They're very accurate.
General Don Shepard, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
My pleasure.
In a minute, the new security concerns now that the U.S. has attacked the terrorists. CNN's coverage continues in just a minute. If you are just joining us, it has now been about 8 hours since we learned of the U.S.-led strikes against the Taliban militia and other terrorist targets in Afghanistan. For the very latest, let's go to Judy Woodruff.
Greta, the attacks began just after dark in Afghanistan. It was about 8:45 p.m. local time there. The Pentagon has released pictures of jets and cruise missiles being launched. The strike aircraft were based on 2 U.S. aircraft carriers, the USS Carl Vinson and the USS Enterprise. The cruise missiles were fired by 4 surface ships and by 2 submarines. British ships and 15 U.S. land-based bombers also took part in the attacks. There were flashes of light and anti-aircraft fire seen outside Kabul, the capital city. The Ministry of Defense building in Kabul reportedly was hit. A senior Taliban official told CNN that the command system and the radar system at the Kandahar airport also had been destroyed. In addition to Kabul and Kandahar, other targets were Jalalabad in the east and a number of towns in the north. Intelligence sources with the opposition Northern Alliance report at least 7 different locations were hit. President Bush announced the strike at 1 p.m. Eastern. That was about 2 hours after he returned to the White House from Camp David.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime. We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds. More than 40 countries in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and across Asia have granted air transit or landing rights. Many more have shared intelligence. We are supported by the collective will of the world. More than 2 weeks ago, I gave Taliban leaders a series of clear and specific demands. Close terrorist training camps, hand over leaders of the al-Qaeda network, and return all foreign nationals, including American citizens unjustly detained in your country. None of these demands were met. And now, the Taliban will pay a price. By destroying camps and disrupting communications, we will make it more difficult for the terror network to train new recruits and coordinate their evil plans. Initially, the terrorists may burrow deeper into caves and other entrenched hiding places. Our military action is also designed to clear the way for sustained, comprehensive, and relentless operations to drive them out and bring them to justice. At the same time, the oppressed people of Afghanistan will know the generosity of America and our allies. As we strike military targets, we will also drop food, medicine, and supplies to the starving and suffering men and women and children of Afghanistan. The United States of America is a friend to the Afghan people, and we are the friends of almost 1 billion worldwide who practice the Islamic faith. The United States of America is an enemy of those who aid terrorists and of the barbaric criminals who profane a great religion by committing murder in its name.
A few hours after the U.S. and British airstrikes began, an Arab television news network broadcast a videotaped interview with Osama bin Laden. Now, while it's not clear when the interview was conducted, bin Laden praised the September 11th attacks on
America then the voice of appeasement has been loud, lamenting the victims of America. Those people have supported the butcher against the victim.
Again, we don't know when that was taped. Today, Afghanistan's Taliban militia condemned the coalition attacks and claimed to have shot down one attacking plane. That claim was denied by Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. In addition to the Taliban, Iraq and Iran are criticizing the strikes in Afghanistan. There's been no public response from much of the Arab world, including Uzbekistan, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, or Saudi Arabia. Support for the strike has come from Pakistan, Israel, Canada, Germany, Spain, France, and, of course, Great Britain. British Prime Minister Tony Blair went on television to speak to his countrymen.
This, of course, is a moment of the utmost gravity for the world. None of the leaders involved in this action want war. None of our nations want it. We are a peaceful people. But we know that sometimes, to safeguard peace, we have to fight. Britain has learnt that lesson many times before in our history. We only do it if the cause is just, that this cause is just. The murder of almost 7,000 innocent people in America was an attack on our freedom, our way of life, an attack on civilized values the world over. We waited so that those responsible could be yielded up by those shielding them. That offer was refused. We have now no choice. So we will act, and our determination in acting is total. We will not let up or rest until our objectives are met in full.
The Bush administration, meantime, is bracing for retaliatory terrorist attacks against American citizens or U.S. interests around the world after the U.S. military strikes against Afghanistan. In a newly issued worldwide caution, the State Department said the strikes in Afghanistan may result in strong anti-American sentiment and retaliatory actions against U.S. citizens and interests. In particular, the Bush administration is closely watching Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, countries in Asia with large Muslim populations where many Americans live. Extra security measures also are being taken inside the United States. You're looking at a special command center that's been set up by the Washington, D.C. police. The FBI is calling on law enforcement agencies across the country to be at the, quote, highest level of vigilance and to be prepared to respond to any act of terrorism or violence should it become necessary. In addition to Washington, officials in Baltimore and New York, to name just two cities, have ordered extra precautions. Without providing specifics, New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani told reporters that security in New York will be higher, but not quite as intense as it was in the days immediately after the September 11th attack on the World Trade Center.
There's a significant additional number of armed police officers, members of the National Guard who will be guarding sensitive areas that we think might be subject to attack.
And also, organizers of television's Emmy Awards called off tonight's ceremony. The decision, they said, was not based on a specific threat. CBS President Les Moonves says the program was put off because this no longer seemed like a day to celebrate. No one is saying when or if the Emmys will be rescheduled. And that's how the situation stands at this hour. Greta, back to you.
Thank you, Judy. Next, where the terrorism investigation stands, a panel of Time Magazine correspondents join me when we continue our coverage, America Strikes Back. As if attacking Osama bin Laden, feeding millions of hungry Afghan refugees, and keeping together an international coalition were not enough, the White House also has to worry about domestic terrorism and a celery economy. Can the Bush administration juggle it all? Joining me from New York is Time Magazine foreign editor Lisa Beyer. Also in New York is Time editor-at-large Michael Elliott. And in Florida is Times Miami bureau chief Tim Padgett. Lisa, first to you. Osama bin Laden's taped statement today that we've played on the air, how will that be received by the Arab world?
Well, I think it'll be received fairly well by the Arab world. He makes some points that have a considerable amount of resonance in the Arab world. He basically casts the United States in the role of the aggressor, in the role of the party that started all of this by killing Iraqi children, by being responsible for Israel's policy in suppressing the Palestinians. And he talks about 80 years, basically, of humiliation on the part of the Arabs. He seems to be backdating this period to the period of colonialism after World War I, when the Ottoman Empire broke up and colonial powers France and England divided the Arab world into basically arbitrary countries and picked their favorite princes to lead them. And this continues to cause a great deal of resentment in a world that's used to thinking of itself as a power that's dominant and not as one that's being dominated.
Michael, the statement by Osama bin Laden seemed to be a threat, a call for a holy war. Is this going to be received well, as Lisa suggests?
Well, it'll be received well by those who, in the last 5-10 years, have regarded Osama bin Laden as an authentic voice of Islamic radicalism and have been prepared to follow him. That is a slice of the Middle East population. It's probably a larger slice than we're comfortable acknowledging. But obviously it's not an enormous slice, and there are millions and millions of people from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean who would have heard that, and I suspect been repelled by some of the sentiments in it. The task for the United States and its allies over the next 6 months is to reduce drastically the number of people who find the sentiments expressed by bin Laden in the tape that we saw today, and to increase the number of people who are repelled by it and who want nothing to do with it. And that task is one that can't only be performed by means of Tomahawk missiles and special forces. It's also a task that's got to be undertaken by means of propaganda, by means of economic assistance, by means of cultural initiatives, possibly by means of religious initiatives, certainly by means of political initiatives. So, you know, one front of the war, a new front of the war, opened today. But if we are going to shrink the pool of those who listened to that speech and supported it over the next 6 months, it's the other fronts, the non-military fronts, that we've really got to develop.
Which brings in Tim, the non-military front. The investigation sort of fuels the right to go forward with the military. What's the latest in the investigation front?
Well, I think the reason, one of the big reasons anyway, that we started dropping bombs today was that the United States and its allies felt that they had finally connected enough operational and, more important, enough financial dots leading toward Osama bin Laden and the al-Qaeda network. For the past few weeks, we've been reporting quite a bit on a number of money wire transfers that the FBI has been detecting between the al-Qaeda network and hijackers here in Florida and other parts of the United States, particularly the ringleader, Mohammed Atta. And a couple days ago, Doug Waller of our magazine reported that that Atta and some other hijackers in late 1999 had actually met with Osama bin Laden deputies like Ayman al-Zawahiri in Afghanistan. And that coincided, of course, with Britain's report that Osama bin Laden had actually declared that he was going to be doing something like this on September 11th. So they felt that this was, they had provided enough evidence, even if it's not conclusive enough for a court, for example, or to appease the Taliban. They had connected enough dots, and now it was time to start bombing.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. My Time Magazine panel will return as CNN's coverage of the strike against the Taliban continues. Welcome back. We're talking about America's strike against Afghanistan's Taliban and terrorists with a panel from Time Magazine. In New York is Time Magazine foreign editor Lisa Beyer and Time editor-at-large Michael Elliott. And in Florida's Times Miami bureau chief Tim Padgett. Lisa, to you, the strategy that bin Laden seems to be using, which is to divide the world by his statement today, as well as to blame the U.S., that will work as long as it gets to his audience. How does his audience get information in the Middle East?
Oh, well, I think the same way we do, through you. Basically, this tape that we saw will be regarded all over the Middle East as it's being seen all over the United States today.
Michael seems like pretty savvy to use. He's using PR in an effort to forward his case.
Yeah, and he has done for a few years, of course. I mean, video cassettes and audio cassettes of Bin Laden have been in circulation before. I mean, he's never been reclusive in the sense of being an unbelievably tough get in terms of interviews. There have been plenty of interviews with him over the last 5 or 6 years, so there have been plenty of opportunities he's had to get his message out, and he's taken them.
Tim, worldwide caution issued by the U.S. State Department today. Is there some threat, or is there anything that, any terrorism here in the United States that they are particularly paying attention to, the potential for?
Well, I think you have to temper today's alert with the fact that the FBI itself has been saying for the past couple of weeks that they really aren't, this dragnet that they threw out shortly after the attack really hasn't brought in a lot of what we'd call co-conspirators, either on the level of the hijackers or more important, on the upper layer of operational or financial directors. It really hasn't brought in a lot of people that they would think would still be plotting this kind of thing in the United States. I think the terrorists learned something after 1993, the bombing of the World Trade Center then, which was don't leave a bunch of slobs sitting around Brooklyn still mixing bombs after you've made that attack. It seems like the cockroaches fled as soon as the kitchen lights were turned on, and there really aren't a lot of what the FBI would call co-conspirators around. But nevertheless, obviously the alert is warranted.
Lisa, everyone seems to think this is rather sophisticated terrorism here on September 11th in the United States. Is bin Laden's overall approach, do you rate it as sophisticated, taking into account today's statement?
You know, I think the thing to bear in mind here, and it's a terrible thing to acknowledge, but terrorism is pretty easy to pull off. This operation on September 11th required a certain amount of money, some patience, some very committed individuals, but it wasn't hard to pull off. And I think we have to be very much prepared for the next strike, because this is who these people are, and especially in our open society. You know, it's interesting. Osama bin Laden's #1 complaint is against us, but he's also got a huge complaint against the Saudi government. He doesn't attack the Saudi government. He doesn't go after Saudi targets, and part of the reason for that is that because of our freedoms, because of the openness of our society, we're a very, very soft target. It's very easy to commit a terrorist operation in this country, and from that point of view, I think it's really all a question of the will of the Al-Qaeda network, and they've demonstrated that will.
Michael, 30 seconds left. Strategy. Do you rate his current strategy as sophisticated?
Not particularly, because he succeeded in putting together, in opposition to him, an alliance of the most powerful military and economic nations in the world. And when they apply their military and economic and political power, you would expect to see the earth move.
All right, thanks to my Time Magazine panel, Lisa Beyer, Michael Elliott, and Tim Padgett. CNN's coverage, America Strikes Back, will return in just a minute. You're looking at live pictures in Afghanistan as the sun arises, and I want to bring back Lisa Beyer into the discussion. Lisa, you lived in the Middle East for a number of years where a lot of people live under the fear of terrorism. What's life going to be like here in the United States if we continue to live under fear of terrorism?
Well, I think we're going to have to become much more vigilant. I lived in Jerusalem for 9 years until a year ago, and there are all sorts of ways in which Israeli society sort of alters itself to cope with the fact that there is a constant threat of terrorism. People are on their cell phones all the time, checking in with their loved ones to say, I'm here, I'm going there. I'll be here for 15 minutes, and then if you don't hear from me, call me back or whatever. There's no such thing in Israel as an unattended package. If somebody leaves a bag behind, very soon someone will call the police. They'll call in the bomb squad, and they'll blow the thing up. This is such a common sight in Jerusalem. I probably ran into it, on an average once a month. It doesn't even draw a crowd. There's no such thing in Jerusalem or in Israel, for that matter, as a crowded place like a cinema or a shopping center that doesn't have a guard in front that checks everybody who comes in, make sure they're not strapped with explosives, make sure they don't have a bomb in their bag. I think, I'm not sure we have to go that far.
You know, Lisa, as you outlined those things, I mean, I think I could live with all those things, you know, having packages not left unattended. I think, you know, what I think is so different here, and maybe they're used to it in Israel, is not necessarily just the inconvenience, but the fear. How do people on a day-to-day basis live with the possibility that a bomb can go off? We're not used to that here in the United States.
Right, and it's a very sad thing now that we have to get used to it. It's a little bit like a village that lives next to a river that regularly floods. You do adjust to it, and it becomes something that's simply part, you know, of your calculus of things. I know a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine have said that they don't want to feel fear because they don't want to give the terrorists that much. Well, you can't control your feelings. If you're fearful, then you're fearful. But I think the thing that you can do is you can control what you do with that feeling, and you can feel, you know, frightened, but then not allow it to determine your behavior, not allow it to panic you, not allow it to paralyze you, to continue, in other words, to get on with your life.
What's the view of America in the Middle East?
Well, it depends on who you're asking. I think that if you're looking at the Arab world, you could sort of divide the Arab world into concentric circles. In the white hot core, you'd have people like Osama bin Laden and his followers who just want to see us dead, basically. Outside of that, you would have a fairly wide group of people who would be radicalized, not necessarily in an Islamic way, but radicalized and basically be a recruiting pool for that smaller group of people. And then on the outside of that, you would have ordinary people, ordinary, you know, family people, business people, many of whom I think far more than most Americans are really psychologically prepared to understand. On September 11th, they wouldn't have cheered, they wouldn't have danced in the street, but they might have smiled. A lot of people sent congratulatory messages to one another, and they felt, well, it was a sorry thing that all those people had to die, but at least American arrogance got knocked down a notch or two.
And in the 10 seconds we have left, having the American arrogance knocked down a notch or two, is the reputation on hold? Is it now going to improve?
America's reputation? Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we very much run the risk in any military operation against any part of the Islamic world of further inflaming opposition against us. I'm not suggesting that that's not a reason not to act. Of course we have to act.
And I'm sorry, I gave you the question, now I have to cut you off. My thanks tonight to Lisa Beyer of Time Magazine. I'm Greta Van Susteren in Washington. Israeli Foreign Minister Shimon Peres is among the guests next on Larry King Live.
Tonight, the United States strikes against terrorist targets in Afghanistan. What comes next? Joining us from northern Afghanistan, the acting foreign minister of the anti-Taliban Northern Alliance, Dr. Abdullah Abdullah. We'll also hear from Israel's foreign minister and former Prime Minister Shimon Peres. From Wilmington, Delaware, Senator Joseph Biden, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. From Washington, Senator John Warner, former Secretary of the Navy and ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. From Detroit, Senator Carl Levin, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And Phoenix, Senator John Kyle, member of the Select Intelligence Committee. We'll also talk with New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani about the possibility of more terrorist attacks and precautions being taken. Plus, counterterrorism expert, former CIA officer Larry Johnson, and retired Army Colonel John Alexander, former Special Forces team commander and author of Future War. They're all next on Larry King Live. Let's get an update by going to Islamabad, Pakistan, where we're joined by Christian Amanpour, CNN's chief international correspondent. What's the latest on I know it's dawn now in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. What's the latest on what the strikes accomplished, Christine?
Well, you can imagine it's been an exceptionally long night for everybody in Afghanistan and indeed in the region. We know that the Pakistanis have been having a cabinet session that lasted into the early hours of this morning. A previously scheduled news conference by the president of Pakistan is scheduled to go ahead in about 4 hours from now, so we'll hear much more Pakistani reaction then. We do know that Pakistani airspace was used in the overflights, in the airstrikes last night, according to a Pakistani military official. And right right now it's still a little bit too early to assess exactly what's happened on the ground in Afghanistan, although we have throughout the evening been talking to our sources, both Taliban and CNN employees inside Afghanistan, hearing about the strikes that were conducted, some of the places that they were hit. And in Pakistan there have been several small demonstrations against the United States, as I say, small, heavily policed, and they fizzled out quite quickly, but new demonstrations are called for today. We'll see how that pans out.
Christiane, won't daylight give us a lot better indication of what happened, what got taken out, more of the story?
Well, oh yes, I think absolutely. Daylight has pretty much only just broken. What we talked to our sources inside Afghanistan overnight while these attacks were going on, they indicated to us that there was multiple cities under attack, not the center of the cities we understood, but near the airfields. In some instances we were told in Kandahar, the seat of the ruling Taliban, the home of the man called Mullah Omar, the spiritual leader of the Taliban. We understood targets at the airport were hit. Mullah Omar's former residence, a big compound, was hit. Huge plumes of smoke, we're told, rose from that. And indeed, perhaps even one of the maybe terrorist bases around that area. We understand also in Jalalabad, which is quite near the Pakistani border, that was also hit to the south of that city, where we understand there is an airfield and also potentially a terrorist base, according to Taliban military sources there. In Herat, near the Iranian border, there were again targets at an airfield hit, we are told, particularly perhaps an oil dump. There was a large explosion that was reported from there. And you know that also targets at Kabul. Again, in Kandahar, we're also told that a military base was precision hit in the middle of town. Larry?
Do your sources, Christiane, tell you that to expect any kind of daylight action?
We have no indication of that at all. We don't know. You know, you heard from the U.S. officials yesterday and from the Prime Minister of England that this was an ongoing operation. Not only have they been conducting military strikes, but in an unprecedented move. At the same time, the U.S. and Britain maybe, but particularly the U.S. right now, have been conducting airdrops, we were told by Pentagon briefing and by Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, airdrops of food and other humanitarian assistance, which will also continue. We don't know whether that'll be during the daytime or during the nighttime.
Thank you. She's on board and has been on deck through all of this and remains at post. Christiane Amanpour, CNN's chief international correspondent from Islamabad, Pakistan. We now go to Jabul Saraj, Afghanistan. Standing by is Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, the acting foreign minister of the United Front. Are you happy about the events of the day?
Good evening, Mr. King.
Good evening.
Of course, the strike started at 9 o'clock p.m. last night, local time. And as far as we understand, the last time when targets in Kabul were hit was 3 o'clock in the morning by jets flying over Kabul. And the targets, military bases of Taliban in different cities like Jalalabad, Kabul, Kandahar, Herat, Mazar-e-Sharif, and Kunduz. That means all over around Afghanistan were hit, including 2 terrorist camps at least, one in Jalalabad, eastern city of Afghanistan, one in Kandahar, southern city of Afghanistan. As far as we understand so far, the feedback which we have had so far, targets have been hit accurately in Kabul, in Kandahar, especially in Mazar-e-Sharif, in almost in all cities.
Dr. Abdullah, do you fear at all the loss of any people in the Northern Alliance through a friendly fire of some kind? Do you feel to take some losses on your own?
Up to now, there haven't been reports about civilian casualties or losses of our forces. Areas near the front line has not been struck so far. It has been mainly major targets in major cities of Afghanistan. And yesterday we had warned the civilian population in Kabul to keep away from the military targets, and that's what they had done as far as we understand. Unfortunately, there haven't been any reports about civilian casualties so far.
Is your own goal, Dr. Abdullah, to see the Taliban wiped out? Is that the goal of your group?
Of course, if the goal of the operation is to eradicate terrorism, that cannot be done without wiping out Taliban from Afghanistan. After all, it was Taliban who have harbored terrorist groups for so many years and comforted them and facilitated their activities in Afghanistan, in the region, and beyond the region.
Has the United States and its allies kept you informed of what's been going on? Did you know this was going to happen before it happened?
Yes, we did. We did know, and we let a few hours prior to the strikes know roughly that to our population and also the media that the strike was imminent. So we knew about it beforehand.
If the goal is accomplished, if Taliban is wiped out, significantly reduced, what next?
I think peace will be established in Afghanistan, and the international community should support the people of Afghanistan to achieve its final goal, which will be giving the people of Afghanistan the right to self-determination. We are ready to work with all Afghan groupings which share two principles of peace. By peace I mean just, fair, and acceptable peace, and the right of self-determination to the people of Afghanistan. Reconstruction of Afghanistan, rehabilitation of Afghanistan will be a necessary step afterwards.
Is your group united?
Yes, of course. We were united before 11th September, in September 9th, when one of our heroes were assassinated by the same terrorist networks, by Osama bin Laden's people, and we remained more united after that assassination attempt and after the events in September 11th. And that's how we have been able to hold against Taliban and deadly terrorist groups which have been fighting against us for so many years.
Doctor, does the Taliban control bin Laden, or does bin Laden control the Taliban?
It is rather the other way around, as you yourself rightly put it. It is in recent years, it was mainly terrorist groups which were in control of the situation in Afghanistan, foreign friends of Taliban which were in control of the situation in Afghanistan. But they both supported each other, they both served the interests of each other. For example, Osama's people were fighting against us in Afghanistan to get rid of us, to get rid of a resistance in Afghanistan, so Afghanistan would be, the Afghan territory would be in their control, in the control of the Taliban and the terrorist groups. From the other side, Taliban had provided terrorists the facilities, and they were facilitating their activities in Afghanistan. So they were both benefiting from cooperating with each other.
We thank you very much, and we'll be calling on you again from Jabul Sarraj, Afghanistan. Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, the acting Foreign Minister of the United Front, we thank you. You're watching Larry King Live on this Sunday night. We take a break and we come back with the Foreign Minister of Israel, Shimon Peres. Don't go away.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime.
Shortly after the start of today's military activity, I spoke with Israeli Foreign Minister Shimon Peres and asked about his reaction to the strikes.
I don't have the slightest doubt that the decision that was taken by the President of the United States is the right one, the just one, and you are going and we are going to win it. For the simple reason, not just because you have the technological supremacy, you have the moral supremacy. Bin Laden does not offer any solution and any hope to no person in the world who is not a Muslim. And to the Muslims who are not fanatic, they don't have a chance. And the fanatics who don't kill are not included in his agenda. He offers nothing but killing and hate and murder. He cannot win. On the other hand, the United States and all the free world must win. There is no room for compromise. There is no way to let 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 crazy people to kill hundreds and thousands of innocent men and women and children. So I believe that in that case, it was one of the right and courageous decisions. You wrote a book about prayers. All of us are praying today for the United States Armed Forces, for America and its presidents and its leadership. We're in the same camp. We shall do whatever we can and whatever we shall be asked to in order to help to win this battle.
Years ago, you were asked to show restraint and not respond to Scud attacks. Israel might well be a victim again here. Will you do whatever the United States asks you to do?
We see in the United States the leader of this campaign, and we shall not do anything that may frustrate or endanger the campaign itself.
Did Israel know this was going to take place before it took place? Were you informed?
The President of the United States called the Prime Minister of Israel an hour before the campaign started and has informed us that within an hour time the campaign will start.
The other day, your Prime Minister, Mr. Sharon, attacked Mr. Bush in the United States. He later, 3 days later, apologized. What did you make of all of that?
I'm full-heartedly with the apologize. I don't think we meant to attack the President, whom we hold in high esteem, and we consider him a real and true friend of our country. And we look forward to a joint effort to really bring a settlement to the Middle East and peace to the rest of the world.
There has been some heavy fighting between Israeli and Palestinians in the last few days. Why?
I think the story is now revealing itself. There are 3 or 4 armed groups among the Palestinians. It is for Mr. Arafat to decide. Either he's going to control all of them or will become a prisoner of them and even a victim of them. Most of the killing and shooting were done by the jihad and by the Hamas. These are a sort of private organizations and private arms. Arafat has to decide. Either he will control them or be controlled by them. And the leadership is not just making declarations, but making choices. Some of them are very difficult. And I hope that Mr. Arafat will do the right thing in deeds, not just in declarations.
And you met with Mr. Arafat last week. Did that go well?
It started well, but the implementation of our agreements was not quick to arrive. It didn't arrive even today in full. There is a start and a beginning, and we are watching if there will be a continuation and he will fully comply with his commitments. If this will happen, we shall continue our talks, because we too would like to see a decline in the tension and the beginning of a real peace negotiation.
Back to the current situation, a few more things. If Israel were asked to commit weaponry or to commit troops, or would it go that far?
We would go the farthest possible way to make the world safe. May I say, you know, that the first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben Gurion, offered to the United States even to send Israeli units to Korea. We feel part and parcel of this campaign, and if we shall be asked, everything will be considered seriously and positively.
Do you expect it to be successful over the long haul?
100% it will be successful. Look, we are fighting terror and terrorists. I myself confronted them on many, many occasions. Larry, let me tell you, they are not as courageous or brave as you think. They are cowards, and if they will see strength, they will retreat. Their strength is usually our weakness. The minute you appear determined and strong, you will win. You know, 20 years ago, we did something which was very daring in Entebbe. It looked like it's impossible to overcome the kidnapping of the people, the hijacking of the plane. We did it 4,000 miles from home, successfully, basically, because this was a combination of courage and surprise. I do believe the United States possesses those two things as much as it needed.
Thank you so much. We'll be calling on you again. It's always good to see you. The Foreign Minister of Israel, former Prime Minister Shimon Peres from Tel Aviv. I'm Larry King, and we'll be right back. Before we talk with some of the leading figures of the United States Senate, we're going to spend a couple of moments with our buddy New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. The FBI has called on law enforcement agencies across the United States to be on the highest level of vigilance and asked cities to cooperate. What specifically, Mr. Mayor, have they asked New York to do?
Well, we have a plan that we worked out with them, I guess it's about 3 weeks ago now, that we just put into effect. I mean, it's a plan that we've been ready to put into effect for the last 3 weeks, in which we've deployed a lot more police officers, 4,500 National Guard. We have them at what we call sensitive locations, the places that you might think somebody might want to do something with. And then we also have them at the entrances and exits to the city so that we can have checkpoints and at the airport. Essentially, it involves deploying a lot more uniformed officers or armed National Guard and then staying in close contact with the Joint Terrorism Task Force that's made up of the FBI and police, so we pick up any specific intelligence that may exist.
To your knowledge, have other cities been asked to do pretty much the same thing you're doing?
You know, I assume that that's the case. I mean, because there's, at this point, the idea that the terrorists will do something is a supposition. It's a supposition based on the fact that they've done something in the past. So nobody knows what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, or where they would do it. So it makes sense to be on alert in a cautious, sensible way all throughout the country. And this is very, very hard, but without alarming people, because there's nothing anybody can do about this. I mean, ordinary citizens can't do anything about this. This is sort of beyond their control, so they might as well just go about leading their lives, and we will try to do everything we can to pick up the intelligence and to try to thwart them from doing anything they might be thinking of doing. They should leave that to law enforcement.
Have you had any specific threats?
No. We haven't had any specific threats directed toward New York City. It's just the obvious caution that would come after an incident like the attack on the World Trade Center and then the action that the President of the United States took today to defend us. Action, by the way, which everyone in New York City heartily endorses, and we're very, very proud of the President and very proud of our military in the way in which they've carried out our defense.
The local papers in New York were reporting some sort of a lockdown plan. Do you have a plan that locks down the city?
No.
What is that?
No. There is, I'm not sure I know what a lockdown plan is. We have a plan that would say that if we had specific threats, then of course, whatever it suggested, we would close that down. If there were threats to the bridges or the tunnels or the airports or buildings, then those areas would be closed down, evacuated. But I mean, there's no plan to lock down the entire city.
As you mentioned, there's nothing you can do with the fear, but how do you balance when you talk to people optimism and logical pessimism?
By being honest with them. They're going to be they're going to be concerned. They're going to be nervous. Just the case. You got to just accept that, and then you got to do everything you can to rally them. I took a walk on Times Square today after the attacks took place. You know, while they were going on, because I walked in the parade in Staten Island, just to show people, don't lock yourself in your house. Get out. Do what you would ordinarily do. Be brave. Don't be sitting there all worried. I mean, the President is doing what he's supposed to do. He's prepared this very carefully. The FBI and the police are working really hard to try to keep things as secure as possible. And you can play your part by going about your life. And even if you have some concerns, try as hard as you can to put them aside and just go about your life. That's how you're going to make your contribution to this effort to overcoming these terrorists.
Well said. New York planning any changes in the Columbus Day Parade as it going on?
Columbus Day Parade is going to go on tomorrow. We had one in the Bronx today and one in Staten Island. Both of them went on. The one in Staten Island, by the way, was the best attended that I can remember, and I've attended it for the last 12 years in a row. So we'll have a parade tomorrow. It's going to be in honor of our heroes, and our heroes are the firefighters and the police officers, emergency workers, and then all of the innocent people that gave their lives at the World Trade Center. And now I think we have a new group of heroes that we'll be honoring, and that'll be our military men and women who are carrying out this very difficult assignment.
Thank you, Your Honor. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. See you very
Always
soon.
on duty.
At the World Series. At the World
You're
Series.
positive the Yankees will be, correct? Yeah.
I'm always
Aren't we all? Yeah. His Honor, New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani. You know, baseball still matters, folks. When we come back, Senators Biden, Warner, Levin, and Kyle will join us. This is Larry King Live. Later, much talk about terrorism and what we can do undercover-wise to spot it and wipe it out. Don't go away.
The battle is now joined on many fronts. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail. Peace and freedom will prevail.
We now welcome a panel of distinguished United States senators to join us in discussion. Senator Joe Biden is in Wilmington, Democrat of Delaware, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. In Washington is Senator John Warner, Republican of Virginia, ranking member of Armed Services and former Secretary of the Navy. In Detroit is Senator Carl Levin, Democrat of Michigan and chairman of Armed Services, member of the Select Intelligence Committee. And in Phoenix, Senator John Kyle, Republican of Arizona, member of the Senate Intelligence Committee and a ranking member of the Judiciary Committee Subcommittee on Technology, Terrorism, and Government Information. We'll start with Joe Biden and run down all four. Senator, your reaction to the events of today?
Going off as planned, I got a chance to speak to the White House and the CIA and the State Department. We're not going to know until, well, we're probably learning right now based on reconnaissance what damage was actually done. I feel pretty good about what's happened so far. It's a beginning, Larry. There's a long way to go, and seems successful so far.
Senator Warner?
Well, I was called, like many others, by the Secretary of Defense this morning, and how proud I am of our president and 40 nations that have bonded together to help stamp out this terrorism. And tonight, right as we're speaking, because I just talked to the Pentagon again, men and women, the Armed Forces of the United States, Great Britain, and pledges from others are carrying out successfully their mission. Larry, we gave every possible warning to the Taliban. They failed to adhere, and now it's not just the United States, but the whole world is turning against them. And I hope those of the Muslim faith will recognize it's not against them, and they're in a good position to help us better understand and to perhaps give us the intelligence necessary to stop bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda.
Concerning bin Laden, Senator Levin, in a taped message, we believe obviously it was stated after September 11th, but before the events today, bin Laden said that America will never dream of security until the infidel armies leave the land of Mohammed. America was hit by God in one of its softest spots. America is full of fear from its north to its south, its west to its east. Thank God for that. What do you make of that comment?
It's just more of the same. We've got a long road to defeat terrorism in this world, but we've made a beginning today, going after him, going after his operatives, and doing it in the right way. It's very clear that the administration understands that our first goal, of course, is to get after bin Laden, to get after his operatives, and to make Afghanistan no longer a haven for terrorists. But it's also important, and I think Secretary Rumsfeld made this very clear this morning, that if possible, that Islamic countries take the lead here, or at a minimum, that the Afghan people be the tip of the spear to remove bin Laden, because that will prove the propaganda lie that he's been trying to spread, that somehow or other this is a war against Islam. It is not. It is a war of the civilized world, including Islam, against terrorism, and it's very helpful, and I think very practical if the people of Afghanistan can be the ones who throw out bin Laden and destroy him, because that would really show the propaganda for what it is that bin Laden's trying to spread to the streets in the Islamic world.
I don't know what the average citizen can do about it, Senator Kyle, but should we governmentally be concerned about retaliation?
It's the wrong word, Larry. The September 11th attack on the United States was not in retaliation for anything. It's because they hate us. And they have additional attacks planned, I'm sure, and they've been planned for a long time, not knowing what action the United States might take. So we have to do what we have to do and fully expect that the terrorists will strike again. But it's not in retaliation to what we do. It's because they intended to do us harm. The only way we're going to end this kind of terrorism is first to strike at bin Laden and the Taliban, and then go to the source, the base of operations throughout the rest of the world that harbor and support these terrorists, and bring that to a stop as well.
Senator Biden, Cristiano Ampur gave us the report, as others have said, that we're dropping food and medicine to displaced Afghans inside Afghanistan. Is that going on? Is that confirmed? And do we know they're getting it?
We don't know yet where they're getting it, but there's 350,000 of these meals that can sustain a person for a day that are being dropped, Larry. And, you know, I think it's an important point to make that the mayor made. It is supposition that we are going to be attacked again. We do not have, I don't want the American people thinking the CIA, I was on a secure line tonight with them. I don't want anyone thinking that we know that there's another New York planned, we know a specific deal going on. We assume that they'll continue, whether or not we respond to them, to repeat the kinds of things they've done. But we do not have. It is supposition now. So this notion that Americans should be fearful and not go about their daily lives tomorrow morning would be a gigantic mistake. People should go about their daily lives. And the way we're going to end this is we suck the oxygen out of the air these guys breathe by shutting down havens for them like they have now in Afghanistan with the Taliban as their protectors.
And Senator Warner, to back up what Senator Biden just said, we've just confirmed that 2 C-17s have dropped relief supplies down. Is that something you support? And are you sure it's going to go to the right place?
As sure as we can be. In my discussions today with the military experts, we've done a lot of practicing in the last year on how to successfully airdrop and target, almost like precision munitions, those drops to where they belong. You know, this, I think, is the first time in contemporary military history where a military operation is being conducted against the government of a country, and simultaneously with the troops carrying out their mission, other troops are trying to take care of the innocent victims who all too often are caught in harm's way. That's to the credit of the American people. That's a clear example to the Muslim world of how we care for people, irrespective of their background or their religion. We are a peace-loving nation. And I want to pick up on another thing that the mayor of New York said. What a marvelous man he has been throughout this whole tragic episode. But we were talking about what can you do? Yes, we go back to our normal life, but America has grown up. We're more cautious now for ourselves and our children, but we go about our way of life holding our head high. Tonight I attended a prayer vigil for those who suffered at the Pentagon and for those first responders that came. And as I sat there, I said to myself, this is a clear difference between America and so much of that world that perceived is to hate us. And I hope every citizen, yes, we have an intelligence problem, but think of yourselves as an agent, not to spy on your neighbor, but just to judiciously report to those in authority if you see something suspicious, because we're all in this together and we all want to survive.
Senator Levin, at this point, what is Congress's role?
To be very supportive of the president, to give him and our military all the resources that they need to help our intelligence.
I'm going to interrupt you, Senator Levin. We have a special press setup here with a B-52 lead pilot, a B-52 bombardier, an offensive weapons system officer, and a refueler pilot might be in progress. Let's join it. This all was part of the mission today.
I think we're ready once to start.
We've got a teleprompter, unfortunately. It's not just a sitting.
This is obviously set up by phone.
Pastoral scene.
Can we start with Woodstock on the bombing run. Could you tell us what your personal experience was today?
Oh.
What did you see? What did it feel like? What did you think?
I did not know that.
Can they hear?
Hello?
Hello?
I'm trying to answer your question. It's a little difficult for us. We train for this eventuality. We certainly don't look forward to it, but we're equipped to handle it when it comes to us. And so today, what I was thinking about more than anything was the mission handed before us, the fabulous training that I've received throughout my career, and the safety of my crewmates. And all those things came together, and it was as we had trained for. And so it was like what we practiced to do. It all came together just perfectly.
How did it come together?
Well, again, the tremendous training that we received through the support.
Steve, I don't know whether you can hear me or not. Hopefully you can. I'd like to try to take this thing from the top. I have no idea what these maps look like.
Please. Whoever's talking about the maps, please get off the phone.
Thank you.
Stinky, go ahead, please. Or Woodstock, sorry.
Again, it all came together because we train for this. This is what America's citizens expect us to be able to do. And in peacetime, we prepare for these eventualities. And then today, we had all the moving parts from the people who support us on the ground, preparing the aircraft, preparing our intelligence, all the numerous support functions that just came together like a finely oiled machine, so that it was very similar to what we practiced for at home. And there were very few differences other than being in a different region of the world than we would normally be. But our training just all came together, so it seems very familiar.
Even without discussing the operational details, can you tell us what Afghanistan looked like to you from altitude, sir?
We're obviously flying by rote here, and that's a phone conversation and live interruptions. We're doing the best we can as events continue. We'll take a break, come back, rejoin our senators, and hope we can hook up with that conference again. Don't go away.
The operation today involved a variety of weapon systems, and it originated from a number of separate locations. We used land and sea-based aircraft, surface ships and submarines, and we employed a variety of weapons to achieve our objectives.
That was rather garbled and hastily thrown together, but we'll return with Senator Levin. You're chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Apparently, from that pilot's one clear account that we heard, everything went perfectly.
Well, that's really what we are here for and what we worry about. We want to make sure that our troops have the best equipment, the best training, and it sounded like it worked for him and for his crew today. And then we have those C-17 crews that dropped all those relief packages, tens of thousands of tons of food today, and there'll be a lot more showing what our purpose here is, which is to strengthen the opposition so that the Afghan people can reoccupy their country. We are not there to occupy Afghanistan like the Soviets did in the 80s. We are there to help the Afghan people and the opposition to reoccupy their country and for them to take on the Taliban and bin Laden. And those missions today, I think, were the first steps in that long journey.
Senator Kyle, you're a member of Select Intelligence Committee. Do we have a difficult balance here of what we're going to learn and what has to be kept secret?
I don't really think so, Larry. Obviously, a lot of the operational details will not be disclosed to the American people. We'll not ever know some of the things that occurred, and much of it we'll learn after the fact. But I think that our government is open enough that we'll know an awful lot about this. And remember, too, that part of the effort is to play real mind games with the Taliban and with others who are harboring terrorists And in that regard, we have to let them know that we're going to be doing certain things. So I think in some respects, the more clear we make it to them that this will be a relentless and very robust campaign against them, the more they're likely to cut and run. And obviously that's part of the game here, to get them to disperse so that the Afghan people can take control of Afghanistan, and so that eventually the countries that harbor terrorists elsewhere in the world will begin to decide that it's better to be with us than to be harboring terrorists who might harm us.
What are our concerns, Senator Biden? I know Colin Powell's going to India and he's going to Pakistan. If the Taliban falls, does the United States, does the United States play a part in setting up whatever is new there?
Well, Larry, we are playing a part right now. There's no doubt in my mind the Taliban is done. And the American people are going to learn about that, and the world is going to learn about that in a matter of weeks, I predict. The hard part's going to be what follows on after the Taliban, so we don't have the chaos that occurred after the Soviet Union left, and real chaos in that area of the world. The harder part's going to be getting bin Laden himself, but we are in the process, along with others in the region, Islamic countries as well, trying to make sure that the Pashtun, the part of the population in the south, has some kind of coalition with the so-called Northern Alliance. So when a government is put in place, replacing the Taliban, there's a prospect for stability and little prospect of the flourishing of the kind of Al-Qaeda operations that existed there before. But the hard part's going to be putting it together. The easiest part's going to be taking it down.
Are you as confident, Senator Warner, of the end of the Taliban that quickly?
Oh, I think that they're being dispersed tonight, and I'm hopeful that the Arab world will quietly, in their own way, pass the word, it's over, and that nation can no longer harbor those criminals. And in the aftermath, I hope the coalition of nations which worked with us on this will help reformulate some type of government so that this self-determination, that greatest strength of democracy, self-determination in the follow-on government. We're going to succeed in this. I commend the President in the excellent way that he and his Secretary of Defense and others have patiently put this together and on their own timetable finally utilized military force. Diplomacy has been working, economics have been working, humanitarian efforts have been working, and the Taliban got the message and they didn't listen, and now, of course, the military action was necessary.
It is, Senator Levin, a delicate balance, though, when you're bombing a country and also telling that country that you care about them.
I think we're doing that very well, and particularly with the dropping of so much food aid, which we're doing, but also making it clear that we are not there to occupy Afghanistan, that we are there to help the Afghan people to take back their country from the Taliban, which really is not at all historically what Afghanistan is all about. And I also believe that the Taliban is finished. It may be a little more gradual. It may be that they're going to be dispersed into the mountains first, and then they have to be ferreted out from there. But what my hope is that it'll be the Afghan people in some kind of a government that is put together, that is representative of all the Afghan people, that is doing the ferreting out so that they become the tip of the spear. I think that is very important in terms of the aftermath of Afghanistan. Bin Laden wants to be killed by the West. We should hope that indeed that does not happen, that he is ferreted out and destroyed by his own not by his people, he's a Saudi, but by the Afghan people, because if it is Islamic people that do him in, it'll be, it seems to me, the very dramatic answer to the propaganda lie that he tries to disseminate.
He wants to be killed by the West so that martyrdom occurs.
Exactly.
Senator Carl, are you concerned at all that the coalition will hold, that the people of the neighboring countries will stay with this if there's bombing and constant repetition and night after night strikes?
Well, there are a lot of people within various Middle East countries that won't like what the United States does. That will put pressure on their governments. But I think that as each mission evolves with different coalitions surrounding it, you'll see that we've been able to hold together. In the long run, though, I think we have to be prepared to deal with the fact that there are several Arab nations and one Muslim nation, Iran, in the area that need to stop supporting terrorism. And we're going to have to turn from Osama bin Laden and the Taliban in Afghanistan to those other countries to be able to root terrorism out of there as well. You've got to destroy the base of operations everywhere in the world, or these people will find somewhere else to operate. And the same thing is true of the schools that they operate, the so-called madrasas, which of course educate a new group of terrorists coming along. So until you destroy that base of operation, we haven't completed our task.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you for joining us on this Senate. I got to take a break, and then we have to call on our two terrorism experts. But we're calling on all of you again. I'm Larry King, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. That scene when we went to break is of Afghanistan this morning. It is now early morning in Afghanistan. We welcome to Larry King Live in Washington, Larry Johnson, terrorism expert, former CIA officer, and in Las Vegas, Colonel John Alexander, United States Army retired, former Special Forces team commander. Larry, in your opinion as an expert on terrorism, was today an effective start?
We're not going to know for several days. It's starting us down the right path. You have to take apart their military infrastructure, and then we're going to be in a position to go after the guts of the terrorist organization. At a minimum, they're so busy avoiding bombs today, they don't have time to do planning. That's the good news.
Colonel Alexander, you were a Special Forces team commander. When do you expect commandos and Special Forces to start going in?
Oh, they already have been.
I mean, going into where they're in action.
Well, as you know, we've already had reports of the SAS making contact with bin Laden's forces, and that was maybe a week or so ago. So they've probably been in and out for some time.
Do you expect, Larry, this operation to succeed with regard to the Taliban?
It's going to succeed, but it's going to succeed in a way that we haven't been accustomed to in the past. For example, FBI Director Mueller has done an outstanding job over the last week of pulling together the different law enforcement agencies. They're working right now on the financial puzzle. So for the first time, you've got FBI, DEA, Customs, IRS sitting in a room, sharing information. And in the past, you've had turf battles where Treasury and Justice would go at each other. Here you had Attorney General Ashcroft and Secretary of Treasury O'Neill together, encouraging, and they're making tremendous progress on that front.
Colonel Alexander, your new book is Future War, subtitled Non-Lethal Weapons in 21st Century Warfare. Is this a good example of that?
Well, this is a phase in a multi-phase war, and I don't think you're going to see much in the way of non-lethal weapons used in the Afghanistan phase, except maybe to go after electrical infrastructure where you saw the carbon fibers. But as the Senator was mentioning at the end of their segment, this war is going to go on for a long time, and much of it is going to take place in major metropolitan areas around the world. And there we need to be able to separate terrorists from hostages or just people who happen to be co-located with them.
And what about on the home front, Larry? We know this is going to occur around the world. What can the public do, if anything, or is Mayor Giuliani right? All you can do is all you can do.
Well, he's right. One thing everyone can do is stop being afraid. We're going to scare ourselves into making it worse than what it is. The fact of the matter is, right now, with the investigation on so many fronts, these guys are being run to ground. Their ability to organize and to conduct operations right now is extremely difficult. It's not impossible, but last week there was the word circulating, 100% certainty of attacks. That's too alarmist. The reality is we don't know. We're 100% certain that we don't know. So what should we do? We should be calm.
Colonel Alexander, would you agree with that? We're 100% certain that we don't know?
Well, I think so. The terrorists certainly have some of an advantage of picking a time and place. But I think what he said about this is very important, about going on about your life. We do know that there's a lot of young folks today that are particularly upset, but they've never been through any kind of threat to the U.S. Those of us of my generation remember duck and cover and things like that. You'll get used to it, and life will go on.
Does bin Laden's statements, Larry, give you concern, his statements played today?
I think he was pretty stupid coming out and saying that stuff. If nothing else, someone had to physically deliver that tape to the television station, wherever it was ultimately broadcast from. Once you start putting things in people's hands, there's a way to trace it back. I hope he continues to be as arrogant and as overconfident, because I think ultimately he's going to wind up dead.
Any personal measures you'd recommend, Colonel? Should the public buy antibiotics? Should they buy gas masks?
No, I think the news media, by and large, is scaring a lot of people, and potentially needlessly. Again, it's about going about your life, and as the woman from Israel mentioned earlier, just be aware of what's going on around you. If you see things that are really unusual, report it to local law enforcement. They're going to play a key role in what happens in our counterterrorism here in the United States.
Long haul, right, Larry? Be prepared for that, though.
Yeah, this is really the easy part. I mean, as you look down the road, we're going to have to deal with Lebanon. They're a staging base for terrorism. Iran and Syria have been supporting them. Now, right now, Iran and Syria are saying, hey, we're with you, great. But ultimately, they're going to have to prove it by shutting those camps down and giving those terrorists up.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks, Colonel. We'll be calling on you both again, Larry Johnson and Colonel John Alexander. We'll take a break, and I'll come back and tell you about tomorrow night, and we'll tell you what Aaron Brown's going to be doing following us. Don't leave us. I'm Larry King. Stay there. Tomorrow night on Larry King Live, Bob Woodward, the Pulitzer Prize winner of the Washington Post, Walter Cronkite, the Dean of American Television Newscasters, Senator Richard Shelby, and others. I'm Larry King, and we're going to turn it over now to my man, Aaron Brown in New York, Aaron Brown has been on all day, all night. He's around ever since he signed on to this network. He has been our 24-hour man.
I'm the 24-hour news network.
Take it away.
Thank you, Larry, and good evening again, everyone. Tonight from Atlanta, whatever America's new war is going to be, it has begun. How and when it will end and at what cost are things we cannot know tonight, but we know a lot. It is morning in Afghanistan. And like so many other mornings there in the last 20 years, war has come. But for all the might of the Soviets a generation ago, for all the battles fought in the civil war that followed, it is fair to say Afghanistan, and these are live pictures, has never seen a morning like this. Coalition airstrikes began as night fell on Afghanistan around midday Sunday Eastern Time. Airports, anti-aircraft sites, training camps for Osama bin Laden's terrorist forces, all of them targeted. The president gave the Pentagon the go-ahead last night, telling aides this morning, I gave them, speaking of the Taliban, fair warning.
More than 2 weeks ago, I gave Taliban leaders a series of clear and specific demands. Close terrorist training camps, hand over leaders of the al-Qaeda network, and return all foreign nationals, including American citizens unjustly detained in your country. None of these demands were met. And now, the Taliban will pay a price.
From somewhere in hiding, there was the face of defiance. We don't know when Osama bin Laden taped this or from where, but the message was chilling, a call to arms in the Muslim world and a warning. Americans may never feel safe again. At home tonight, even tighter security, reprisals anticipated. We're seeing the bad guys doing the same things they did in the days before September 11th. And officials are on edge in cities across the country. All are on alert. We'll be joined tonight by Judy Woodruff in Washington and our entire team of CNN correspondents, both here in the United States and around the world. Quickly, though, we want to first touch bases both in Afghanistan and in Washington. Just a quick headline, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get back to all of you in a moment. We begin first with Kamal Haider on the phone from Afghanistan. Kamal.
Yes, Aaron, it's morning here, and it's been a busy night for most people here. Of course, you're aware that Kandahar has come under attack almost for 4 times. There were 4 waves of attack. They came the space between 1 hour to 1.5 hours between each strike, keeping most of the city very tense and on the edge. At one point, people started to move out of the city. That, I think, is going to be something to watch out for, because people were just feeling comfortable, the civilian population feeling comfortable that they were going to be safe and were returning into the city. Reports from there indicate that no civilian target was hit, that indeed all the targets hit were military, but the body count has not started.
Okay.
And I think Kandahar will be,
Kamal, hang on. We'll get back to you in a little bit. I want to quickly go to Jamie McIntyre. He's at the Pentagon. Jamie, any damage assessment yet?
Not yet, although with the daylight hours, the Pentagon will be sending up spy planes and using spy satellites to see what they hit and what they might have missed and what might need restriking. With the nighttime hours over, the nighttime bombing is over. All of those runs have been completed. The pilots are back safely, but Pentagon officials say they expect to continue to strike Afghanistan for at least a few days. Aaron?
All right, Jamie, we'll get back to you to review what happened on Sunday in a moment. Let me go next to Chris Burns. Chris is in northern Afghanistan in an area controlled by the Northern Alliance. That's a hugely important piece in the puzzle that is being built now. Chris?
Aaron, bright flashes of light, one after the other, for 6 hours last night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. in a coordinated effort between the coalition forces from the air as well as on the ground by the Northern Alliance. We saw plenty of Katyusha rockets striking at various positions of the Taliban along the front line north of Kabul. The Northern Alliance says that the airstrikes were aimed at radar, air defense, air bases in the north and south. Obviously a coordinated effort. No damage assessment yet from their angle. That's why they're holding back on any advance. But they do plan to advance very shortly in the coming days once they can assess exactly what kind of damage was done to the Taliban. Aaron?
Chris, we'll get back to you for more on the Northern Alliance and their role as we go along. Next to Islamabad, Christiane Amanpour is there. Hard to overstate the importance of reaction in Pakistan this morning. Has it started to come in?
Well, clearly the government here is going to be keeping a very close eye on the street today following a few scattered demonstrations in the early hours of this morning following those U.S. and British strikes on Afghanistan. The demonstrations were, as I say, small. They were heavily outnumbered by police and they ended fairly quickly. But today is going to be a test according to the government. President Musharraf, in a previously scheduled news conference, is scheduled to hold that now in 3 hours' time. We'll hear more from him on what happened overnight. And the government here has already issued a statement saying that it regretted the Taliban had failed to take the right decisions, thus incurring military action, that it hoped the military action would end quickly with little damage, no damage to the Afghan people, and that afterwards there will be a reconstruction effort by the international community in Afghanistan, Aaron.
And Christiane will be back with you literally in a minute or so to the White House, our senior White House correspondent, John King. John, the headline from there tonight.
Aaron, we're told the president continues to receive updates on the bombing runs, also on the humanitarian airlift. Those early reports, senior officials say, are sketchy but encouraging. Still, we are told very early tomorrow morning the president will again, at a public event here at the White House, tell the American people this is a campaign that will, at a minimum, last months. He will also try to reassure the American people, Aaron, the government is doing all it can to prevent future terrorism here in the United States, but that the risk, especially now that the military campaign is underway, remains high.
Okay, John, we'll be getting back to you, John King, at the White House tonight. All right, those are the headlines, both Afghanistan, Pakistan, and in Washington. Now we'll go back to the Pentagon. We'll slow down a little bit and unravel all that went on Sunday. Military Affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre up next. Jamie, run down for us now what the U.S. and the British forces did on Sunday.
Well, today, Defense Secretary Rumsfeld said that the only way to deal with terrorism is to take the battle to where they are and to root them out. And today, the Pentagon embarked on a military campaign that was designed to do just that.
The attack began with a volley of roughly 50 cruise missiles from 4 U.S. Navy surface ships and 2 submarines, 1 American, 1 British. Some 25 strike planes from 2 U.S. aircraft carriers followed, along with long-range bombers, including U.S. Air Force B-52s and B-1s flying from the British base at Diego Garcia. A pair of B-2 stealth bombers flew from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, each capable of dropping 16 satellite-guided bombs before landing at Diego Garcia. The goal?
To make clear to the Taliban leaders and their supporters that harboring terrorists is unacceptable and carries a price.
The missiles and planes hit dozens of targets across Afghanistan, with concentrations near 3 major cities, Kabul, Jalalabad, and Kandahar, where the Taliban has its headquarters. Pentagon sources say the targets included surface-to-air missile sites and early warning radars to ensure the U.S. has control of the skies. Suspected terrorist training camps that were carpet-bombed by B-1s and B-52s, Taliban airfields, and their aging MiG aircraft. and an area in the north where the Taliban had a concentration of tanks and troops fighting the Northern Alliance. That's another part of the U.S. strategy.
And to alter the military balance over time by denying to the Taliban the offensive systems that hamper the progress of the various opposition forces.
The initial strikes did not target Osama bin Laden, but that may be next. Pentagon officials hint special forces could be sent in to capture or kill him.
I want to remind you that while today's operations are visible, many other operations may not be so visible. But visible or not, our friends and enemies should understand that all instruments of our national power, as well as those of our friends and allies around the world, are being brought to bear on this global menace.
While early reports indicate the military strikes were successful, the Pentagon insists they are only the opening shots in what will be a long war.
The fact is, in this battle against terrorism, there is no silver bullet. There is no single thing that is going to suddenly make that threat disappear. Ultimately, they're going to collapse from within.
Just a short time ago, the Pentagon confirmed that another unique part of this mission, humanitarian airdrops of food, had also been completed. 2 C-17s flying from Germany have dropped more than 37,000 humanitarian daily rations packets in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Pentagon officials say the bombings will continue for a few more days, at times during the daylight hours, to keep the Taliban leaders on the run and send a message that they have no sanctuary, even in the daytime hours. Aaron?
Jamie, do you have a chance to listen? I know you've been busy tonight, to listen at all to the pilots, the few pilots who talked to reporters on their return to the carrier?
Very interesting. We heard a lot of, these were pilots actually that returned to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. These were B-1, B-52 pilots. And one of them told an interesting story. He apparently seemed to be from New York. His call sign was Woodstock. And he said that on the nose of his B-52, where they have nose art painted on there, that they had recently repainted it with the words NYPD, we remember.
That's a great little note. Thank you, Jamie. Jamie McIntyre, a long day at the Pentagon today. Thank you. In Washington with us tonight, our friend and colleague, Judy Woodruff. Judy?
Hello there, Aaron. Well, just a moment ago, you did talk to John King at the White House. Let's go back to John now. John, you were saying that the White House, the president, is just beginning to get in some sketchy early reports of how successful these early runs have been.
That's right, Judy. Officials stressing very sketchy early reports, mostly anecdotal evidence from the pilots as they return to base. Any other data the military can get at this moment, daytime in Afghanistan now, the next 10 to 12 hours, most critical in building that battle damage assessment. All this as the president monitors developments back here at the White House now. He was at Camp David over the weekend, and you will remember he said from the very beginning that the terrorists struck on their timetable and that he would strike back on his. He made that decision, we are told, over the weekend up at Camp David after his military team told him everything was in place for the attacks and after one last strategy conversation with the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair.
A festive mood in Baltimore, Cal Ripken's final game. Among those cheering in the stands, the House Democratic leader, Dick Gephardt. It is 7:30 p.m. Saturday, an urgent phone call from Camp David. President Bush is calling congressional leaders and tells Gephardt he has given the go order for strikes inside Afghanistan. 9 p.m. inside the presidential retreat, Mr. Bush talks with top aides about a Sunday address to the American people. 12 hours plus later, at 9:45 a.m. Sunday, U.S. warplanes are secretly en route, and the president sticks to schedule, paying tribute to firefighters killed in the line of duty. No hint of what's to come, but a special reflection on those who stormed into the World Trade Center on the morning of September 11th.
Within a single hour, more than 300 firefighters were lost, and our nation still mourns.
A solemn wreath laying at the firefighters' memorial, then quickly back to the White House, 10:36 a.m., ahead of schedule. In the Oval Office, this to a senior aide, a reference to Afghanistan's ruling Taliban. Quote, I gave them a fair warning. Mr. Bush quickly worked the phones. King Abdullah of Jordan, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, and Presidents Chirac of France, Putin of Russia, and Musharraf of Pakistan among those informed that strikes were imminent. 12:40 p.m., these images from Afghanistan, missiles and anti-aircraft fire in the skies over Kabul. 12:41, just a minute later, the first official confirmation.
We are beginning another front in our war against terrorism
so freedom can prevail over fear.
And at 1 p.m., the president from the White House Treaty Room.
The United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
Mr. Bush made clear this was just the beginning.
Initially, the terrorists may burrow deeper into caves and other entrenched hiding places. Our military action is also designed to clear the way for sustained, comprehensive, and relentless operations to drive them out and bring them to justice.
In that speech, the president asked the American people for patience in the months ahead. And the White House is also asking Americans to be on alert. Quote, "This is war," said one senior official, stressing the risk of terrorism here at home remains high. Judy?
John, and on that front, how much is the White House talking about that? About how much? I mean, there was already a heightened sense of alert, awareness coming off of September the 11th, but after today, how much are they talking about it?
Well, they're telling us things. Some things they will tell us, others they won't. They say there is a continued threat. They say no specific or credible threat that they know of against the White House or the Capitol, any federal installations, or anywhere across the United States. The plan was in place and it was implemented that the FBI would put federal law enforcement on its highest level of alert and call around the country asking states to do so as well. That happened, and the president tomorrow, Judy, will swear in the new director of the Office of Homeland Security. That's the former Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge. His job is coordinating the federal government's response to the terrorist threat, and in case there does happen terrorist strikes, a very difficult job already, a very difficult time now because officials anticipate the terrorists might try to strike again now that the United States has retaliated.
All right, John King at the White House, and now we want to go back to Islamabad, Pakistan, where CNN's Christiane Amanpour, we saw her just a moment ago, speaking with Aaron. Christiane, you were saying that the government is going to be looking at the streets of Islamabad.
Well, you can imagine that very clearly they will be doing so. Let me just show you the morning papers. As you can imagine, this attack having started in the evening early enough for the newspapers, it is all over the front of the newspapers with the subheadline about the Taliban vowing to fight back and about Pakistani supporters and sympathizers last night already calling for a holy war to combat this. Now, these are not just headlines, but this is a turning point for Pakistan as it continues to gauge public opinion. It had the situation under control, it felt, over the last 3 weeks as it stood with the United States, but that was before any military action started. They were always looking to see what would be the development once military action started. Well, today is the day when they'll be able to start seeing that. There have already been scattered demonstrations overnight in the early hours of this morning, not only close to Islamabad, but in Peshawar, near the Afghan border, near Jalalabad, and in Lahore and various other places here. So far small, contained, they quickly ended. They were heavily policed. Also, in the last 48 hours, the government here has arrested, put under house arrest, one of the leaders of the main extremist, if you like, hardline Islamic parties who had been calling out demonstrations over the last few weeks, very vociferous against the government, very anti-United States and pro-Taliban and pro-Osama bin Laden. So they've silenced him as best they can for the moment, and they're waiting to see what the reaction will be. President Musharraf, who, as you know, obviously had thrown his lot in with the international community, is scheduled to hold a press conference, a previously scheduled press conference, in just under 3 hours from now. From him, we will hear more about what happened last night and about what he's feeling about the current situation. The government here already last night met in emergency session. The cabinet issued a statement through the foreign ministry saying that they regretted that it had come to military action, but that the Taliban had failed to make the right decisions to avoid that. They went on to say they hope this operation ended soon, that it would cause minimal damage to Afghan people, and that they hoped afterwards that the international community would do all it could, maximum effort for national reconciliation and reconstruction in Afghanistan. On one other note, and we have yet to confirm this ourselves, but on the wires, the Taliban ambassador here, who has been basically speaking throughout the evening, has said to the Associated Press wire that there are civilian casualties. This does not square with what we've been told by Kamal Haider just a few moments ago from Kandahar, which sustained, apparently, according to eyewitnesses, one of the heaviest bombing rains. He was told that there were no casualties, or at least very few, and indeed a Taliban official speaking inside Kabul yesterday said that there were no casualties. So we will wait to see that, and that clearly will be the defining thing for the street in this part of the world. Judy?
All right, Christiane Amanpour reporting from Islamabad, and of course we are going to be watching as the daylight hours wear on to see just how many civilian casualties there have been. Aaron.
Judy, we've covered everybody but Chris Burns, who's with the Northern Alliance in the northern part of Afghanistan. Chris, it's important in the military plan that the Northern Alliance soldiers carry out a lot of the dirty groundwork. Are they ready?
Well, they say they're ready. Of course, they've been repeatedly described as a ragtag band of soldiers with ex-Soviet equipment, aging Soviet equipment. And that is why what happened last night was just what the Northern Alliance was waiting for. They were waiting for a U.S. airstrike that would perhaps literally level the playing field so they could advance. Now they're holding off to see exactly what kind of damage was done, but certainly from the flashes of light, the explosions that shook the air this far away were about 20 kilometers, 15 miles from the front line, and about 70 kilometers, 45 miles north of Kabul. But we heard and saw quite a bit last night from 9 p.m. until 3 a.m. Targeting radar, air defenses, air bases in the north and the south. Obviously a coordinated action. Some of the very important points for the Northern Alliance were, one, the MiG jets. Now these are MiG aging Soviet fighter jets, a handful of them, but some of them are effective in striking at Northern Alliance positions. In fact, we saw 2 of them drop bombs not far from where we were in the last few days. So that was a worry of the Northern Alliance. They have to see if those MiGs were struck out, were knocked out. Another very important part was Mazar-e-Sharif. That is a strategic northern city that the Taliban hold, that the Northern Alliance has been fighting for days now in an offensive to try to get closer to. Mazar-e-Sharif has 2 air bases that the Northern Alliance says were struck by what is believed cruise missiles, because locals, they say, did not hear any airplanes. All they heard were explosions. They believe those attacks were accurate. Also, along the Uzbek border, it's believed that where there was a buildup of Taliban troops, it's believed that those troops were dispersed by attacks, coordinated attacks throughout the north by the Northern Alliance and by the U.S. and British airstrikes. Aaron.
Chris, thanks. Chris Burns in the northern part of Afghanistan with the Northern Alliance. Thank you very much. Covered a lot of ground in the first 21 minutes of this 2-hour special report. We have much more still to come. Up next, the generals, the strategy, the dangers, and more.
Also ahead, Operation Enduring Freedom, fighting a war like no other. Coming up, a look into how the U.S. military leads a global alliance against terrorists. Also, a who's who list of the men behind this man. And later, terror against Americans and what the U.S. is doing to secure its homeland.
The president has repeatedly said this is a complicated war, that it's military, that it's economic, and it's diplomatic. On the diplomatic side, we've talked a lot since September 11th with former UN Ambassador Richard Holbrooke. Ambassador Holbrooke joins us tonight from New York. Ambassador, it's nice to talk to you again.
Good to be with you, Aaron.
By all accounts, things went pretty well on Sunday. Assuming things go pretty well from here on out, what's the sort of best case you can lay out in the Afghanistan scenario?
I've thought a lot about this, Aaron, since I talked to you earlier today. You know, the best case for us now, and the military launch is obviously correct, and we all support it. The best case would be a relatively quick military success in dispersing the Taliban. That should not be the hardest objective we face. They're a motley group of mullahs and militia. They're not a real government. But after that, this Northern Alliance, and Chris Bury's report, I think, illustrated that. This Northern Alliance is not going to be the governing force in Afghanistan. It's from the wrong ethnic group, and it can't extend. So we are going to end up having to reach some kind of internationally backed, UN-backed effort to take care of Afghanistan. Now, the last time we went through this, it was the Cold War. This time around, the Russians, the Pakistanis, the Chinese, The whole UN community and the Europeans ought to back us on this, but we're going to have we need to start looking at what happens in Afghanistan, because we can't allow another vacuum to take place.
Well, but you know, there's that old saying about history and those who don't pay attention to it. This is precisely what happened, isn't it, after the Soviets left, that the Americans who had been engaged in trying to drive the Soviets out, once that was accomplished, walked away. The
Yes.
argument here that you're making is that for a variety of reasons, the West, or the world, however you want to phrase it, can't walk away.
We have an extraordinarily difficult situation. There are very few countries on earth as remote and difficult as Afghanistan. And it's much tougher than Bosnia or Kosovo or even East Timor, areas I've worked in the last year, all of which the UN's heavily involved in. But if we walk away from the area again, as we did in 1989, and you're absolutely right in what you just said, the vacuum that's caused will again be filled by the wrong kind of people. So I'm proposing that we start talking now about the post-Taliban coalition. I hope centered around the 86-year-old king, at least as a figurehead, who lives in Rome, and that we get the international community, including China, Russia, and the European Union, to back a UN-centered operation of the sort we did in Bosnia and Kosovo. However, two things need to be stressed. One, this will help us get Osama bin Laden, but it doesn't guarantee it, because no government in the capital of Kabul will be able to comb every cave in the south. And two, and this is the big critical variable we have to underscore, none of this will mean that our homeland security is assured, because this network is not run by some guy with a cell phone in a cave in Afghanistan directly. He may be its inspirational leader. He clearly is. But this thing is being run with cells in Hamburg, Germany, and within 10 miles of where you and I are sitting now, there are sympathizers in New York, Atlanta, and Washington.
Ambassador, on that point, if you will, a little bit later in this hour, we're going to play a large chunk of the bin Laden statement today, but I'm sure you've heard it, or at least read the quotes out of it. Tell me your take on it and how the rest of us ought to process it.
First of all, he is in effect taking credit for what happened, as I understand it. He's not explicitly saying he did it, but he's praising the people who did it. He's taking ownership of the process. He's undermining the people in the Islamic world who said that it wasn't a Muslim group. And most interestingly, he is in effect taking the dark side of the same position President Bush said. President Bush said in his extraordinarily effective speech of the joint session of Congress, you're either for us or against us. Osama bin Laden has in effect accepted the challenge and said, yeah, you're either for us or against us. That leads to a very important point, which is that in the long term, we will succeed or fail to the extent that we do not allow this to become Islam against the West. And that, of course, President Bush has been extremely effective in his visit to the Islamic Center and other efforts, and so have other people, but it's going to be a very tricky business. I saw earlier that the American government has closed down its embassy, at least temporarily, in Saudi Arabia. I saw on your screen, if that is true, and that's the first time I heard that, that's not a very good sign, because we are going to need the support of all these regimes. Now, as Henry Kissinger said, Aaron, as Kissinger said to you in your interview with him this afternoon, the Arab leaders who can't publicly support us want us to succeed here, but it's going to be very, very critical that we do so.
Ambassador Holbrooke, it's good to talk to you again. Thank you. We'll see you
Aaron,
back.
It's great to talk to you.
Thank you. We'll see you back in New York, sir. Thank you very much. Richard Holbrooke, we have much more ahead in this special report. We'll be right back. Judy joins us from Washington again as we spend some time now taking a look at the military strategy today and in the tomorrows ahead. We're joined by former General Wesley Clark, who's with us here in Atlanta, and retired Major General, Air Force General Don Shepard in Washington. General Clark, if I may begin, it seemed to me that today was a day when the United States fought this on its terms, its best weapons against the other guy's weakest weapons. Fair to say it gets more complicated from here.
That's exactly right. This is the doctrinal opening stage of an air campaign. We go after his integrated air defense system such as it was. The airfields, the air defense radars, the air defense missiles, the command and control centers. We take down the electricity that feeds these. We may take out some of the radio stations that support his command and control or his psychological control over the population. And if we can, we strike troop concentrations on the ground. It's the opening play, and we hold all the cards at this stage.
But, I mean, there's a but in there, isn't there?
There's a big but.
Yeah.
Because it's not clear that this is decisive in and of itself. And so to accomplish the tasks on the ground, as the Secretary of Defense indicated, that we've got to get some movement on the ground. The Northern Alliance has to take advantage of this. We've got to somehow convert our superiority, our supremacy in the air, into some combat advantage, some combat power advantage on the ground for the Northern Alliance.
Judy, the generals are yours.
Well, I want to ask General Shepard, when are we going to know whether what happened today has made a difference?
Well, it's not going to be tomorrow, Judy. Tomorrow we will take the daylight hours and the good weather that's there right now to take a look at what we call BDA, or bomb damage assessment, to see if we hit the targets that we were after, and then perhaps to retarget them. But this is going to be a long, long campaign. It may be many days, many weeks before we know if we have really weakened the Taliban, which is clearly the reason for these strikes today.
General Clark, what signs do you look for to determine whether you've been successful or not?
Well, in the first case, we want to take care of the integrated air defense system. So we'd expect to see no aircraft flying. We'd expect to look at the runways and see the runways are cratered. We'd expect to see the troop concentrations that we attacked dispersed. We'd expect to see some damaged and destroyed equipment left on the battlefield. But then what we're going to be looking for is his command and control. What does the Taliban do next? Do they fall back in confusion? Do they simply hunker down and hold? And then what can the Northern Alliance do to take advantage of the overwhelming combat power we can bring to bear from the air? Will they start a war of maneuver? Will they try to retake Kabul? Will they move toward the Uzbekistan border and box off the Taliban force that's there? How exactly will they take advantage of this to break the Taliban's power?
And are those things that are going to be immediately obvious, or what?
I think that's really the question, is how soon will we be able to see some change in the forces on the ground that shows we were successful or not? And if we're very effective in targeting, we could see some impact very quickly. If the targets are more difficult, it doesn't seem to register on the Taliban, the losses, or if the Northern Alliance doesn't have the command and control and the planning and the stocks of ammunition and the leadership at small unit level to take advantage of whatever weakness we create in the Taliban, then it'll take a lot longer because there'll be an effort undertaken by someone to buttress the Northern Alliance.
General Shepard, a very wise general suggested to me the other day that there are only so many quality targets for the pilots to hit in Afghanistan. At some point, U.S. forces run out, and then what?
Well, there's a difference between quality targets and important targets. Quality targets we're used to thinking of as bridges, large troop concentrations, large electricity plants, that type of thing. But the integrated air defense system that General Clark referred to is a very important target. We must put that down before we can do the humanitarian airlift that we wish to do. We must put it down before we can weaken the Taliban. So it's going to be, again, it's going to be a long, long campaign, Aaron, and there's a lot of important targets before we can gain total air superiority and go in at will and start plinking away at individual tanks, anti-aircraft pieces, that type of thing, which we will do.
General Shepard and Clark, thanks again. You've been terrific today. You've educated us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Aaron. When we come back, perhaps the most wanted man in the world speaks, Osama bin Laden, and more. We're right back. About the middle of the afternoon, Al Jazeera, the Mideast television network or station, released a tape of Osama bin Laden. There he was, rifles at his side, making his case, issuing his threats. It was positively chilling. We don't know when that tape was made. It looked like it was made in daylight, though, which would make it sometime before the attacks. Beyond that, it is just a guess. Here's what the most wanted man in the world had to say, translated into English.
I believe that there is no God but Allah, and I believe that Muhammad is his messenger. This is America. God has touched it by a wound which has destroyed its greatest buildings, and thank God for that. And this is America filled with fear, from north to south, from east to west. So thank God for that. And what America is tasting now is something very little of what we have tasted for tens of years. Our nation for 80 years is tasting this humiliation, its sons being killed, and its holy places getting attacked, and nobody is hearing. And when God has guided a group, pioneers of Islam, God has helped them to destroy America. I pray to God that to lift them up to the highest position. When those people defended their people, the whole world has been outraged. Children being killed until this minute, killed in Iraq without anything they have committed. And we never heard anybody. We never hear any fatwa. And these days, the Israeli tanks enters Palestine, in Jenin, Ramallah, Rafah, Beit Jala, and other places of Islam, and we never hear anybody who talks about it and takes action. So when the sword came after 80 years against America, then the voice of appeasement has been loud, lamenting the victims of America. Those people have supported the butcher against the victim. I say that the situation is clear, so that any Muslim, after what happened and after what many officials in the United States, headed by Bush, and they came out with their men and with their equipment, and they have encouraged the countries claiming to be Muslims against us. They came out to fight Islam. By the name of terrorism. People in Japan, hundreds of thousands of people, young and old, killed in Japan. This is not a crime. 1 million people killed in Iraq. This is not a crime, but when a few tens of them killed in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, Afghanistan was hit, Iraq was hit. I say these events have split the whole world into two camps, camp of belief and a camp of disbelief, so that every Muslim should come out to fight for his religion. The winds of change has been blowing now. And to America I say to it, and to its nation, I swear by God, America shall never enjoy, nor those who live in America will never enjoy peace unless we enjoy it in Palestine and before all the disbelievers leave our holy land.
Osama bin Laden speaking to the world. Clearly he knew that Americans would hear his words today, as well as the rest of the Islamic world would hear them as well. The focus was on bin Laden, obviously, and we'll spend some time in a few moments talking more about what he said and who he is. But the tape also shows us two other central players. Osama bin Laden may be the face on the wanted poster, but he's not the only face that matters. Mike Betcher tonight on who's who and why they matter.
This most recent tape gives a clear indication of the top corporate structure. In the middle, the CEO, Osama bin Laden. At his side, his most trusted advisor, Ayman al-Zawahiri. And next to him, his military commander, Mohammed Atef. But like any corporate meeting, it begins with remarks from the group's media spokesman, a new face belonging to a man named Suleiman Abu Ghait. After his denunciation of the United States in the West, al-Zawahiri spoke.
America has committed many crimes against the nation of Muslims, unbearable and nobody could bear. America is the head of criminals.
Al-Zawahiri is 50, an Egyptian surgeon involved in radical Islamic politics since his teens. He was jailed for conspiracy after Anwar Sadat's assassination. He first met bin Laden in 1987 when both men fought against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. Al-Zawahiri heads Egypt's Al-Jihad group, which has effectively merged with Al-Qaeda. Like bin Laden, he is a wanted man for his role in the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings. Al-Zawahiri's reputation is a man who influenced bin Laden and a man who may be the real mastermind behind these and other attacks. Not speaking, but very important, Mohammed Atef. Like al-Zawahiri, he's Egyptian, a former policeman who met bin Laden during the war against the Soviets. Atef is now related to bin Laden by marriage.
He was really no one, and he was propelled into someone who has a tremendous importance in the organization as the head of the military command, military operations for the organization.
All three men were seen on another videotape released just 3 days before this one. Again, it isn't clear when either tape was shot. What is striking is how stable the inner workings of Al-Qaeda are. These same three men can be seen in a photo from 1998 at a press conference just months before the embassy bombings.
He has a special style. That style is not to claim credit after the fact, but to put the West on notice that he's about to do an operation.
A reminder, perhaps, that when Osama bin Laden goes public, it is often not just a sign of defiance, but of things to come. Mike Betcher, CNN, Atlanta.
When we come back, we'll talk more about what Osama bin Laden just said. We'll be right back. We just heard that excerpt of Osama bin Laden from that videotape released today. Let's talk some more about that right now with CNN terrorism expert Peter Bergen, who's been writing a book about Osama bin Laden. Peter, if we had any questions about why Osama bin Laden and his network did this, he answered it, didn't he?
Yes, that was a very explicit answer to why he is attacking America. Obviously, the two things that he mentioned prominently were the continued American support for Israel, which in his view is too much, and also the continued U.S. Bombing campaigns against Iraq and the sanctions that have been in place against Iraq previously, which in his mind have killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians.
Well, but isn't there some inconsistency there? Has he always had this feeling of affinity for Palestine and the Palestinian cause?
That's something that's emerged more strongly recently, not only in the statements that we just saw today, but also in a tape that circulated earlier this summer. He started talking about Palestine and Israel more than he talked about in the past. Previously, his principal gripe had been the continued presence of American troops in Saudi Arabia. Interestingly, he didn't reference that today.
You've been studying him for some time, Peter. Are you at all surprised to hear him talk about this translation says millions. In any event, he was saying many, many innocent children are being killed in Iraq because of the sanctions mainly imposed by the United States. Were you aware that he felt that strongly about this?
That's something that he said many times since 1996, 1997, when he first started giving interviews. And that's one of his principal gripes against the United States. How does he justify these attacks on innocent civilians? He justifies it in a way as simple revenge. The United States, in his mind, has killed a lot of innocent Muslim civilians, and this is just, as he says, tasting the same bitter fruit that we have tasted.
And he even brings up Japan, and he talks about the American nuclear attacks on Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and goes on to say, and we believe that's what he's referencing, these people were killed by their hundreds of thousands, young and old. It was not considered a war crime. So
he made that same observation to Peter Arnett and myself when we interviewed him in 1997 for CNN. So this is an old theme. None of the themes in this thing are new in a sense. These are recapitulation of his principal gripes.
But I think the bitterness that is inside the man comes through when you listen to this.
And I think the confidence. I mean, he well understood that this was going to be broadcast in the United States many times. It's a way of getting his message out in a way that he knew would get out.
Do you have any sense from watching this, Peter, when it was taped?
Well, my speculation is that it must have been taped several days ago, because obviously it was taped in a remote part of Afghanistan. Then would have to have got out of the country in some method. So sometime in the last several days, probably.
All right, Peter Bergen, thanks very much. And now back to Aaron in Atlanta.
Judy, tomorrow morning, this nation will see its first head of Homeland Defense get sworn in, Tom Ridge. When we come back, we'll take a look at what's being done about Homeland Defense and talk with 3 mayors who are trying to defend their cities. This special report continues in a moment.
As we've been telling you, security is being ratcheted up across the country in response to the strikes in Afghanistan. CNN's Gene Meserve explains this increased push toward homeland defense.
Many states and localities like Los Angeles already had plans to deal with possible terrorist retaliation for U.S. strikes and rolled them out automatically.
This is something that had been planned, weeks ago, and went into operation as we planned.
In Washington, D.C., a joint command center was activated to coordinate the various law enforcement agencies with jurisdiction in the city. Sunday, they monitored, among other things, an anti-war demonstration across the street from the White House.
We haven't gotten any threats at all today. Again, I think it's just wise for us to all be in a heightened state of alert.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation emphasized that very point Sunday, using its national threat warning system to urge law enforcement to be, quote, at the highest level of vigilance and evaluate whether additional local security measures are warranted. The man who starts Monday quarterbacking Homeland Defense says citizens have a part to play.
These people have chosen America as their battleground. This is their battlefield. And not everybody's in uniform, but in a sense, we all have a responsibility to help secure our borders. So I say to everybody, don't be fearful, be alert.
In more than 300 ports, the U.S. Coast Guard started 24-hour armed surveillance, its largest port security operation since World War II. The Coast Guard also upped from 51 to 72 the number of security zones it's established around nuclear power plants and fuel facilities. And the state of California also stepped up infrastructure security.
We have taken extra precautions to protect the electricity grid, the water project, including dams, bridges, and reservoirs.
There were a few scares. A major highway north of Washington was shut for an hour while police brought in bomb-sniffing dogs to check out 2 Ryder trucks driven by men who, when stopped, made reference in broken English to President Bush. False alarm. It turns out they weren't threatening the president, but helping him, transporting stage equipment used at a presidential appearance earlier in the day. There are some state and local governments that are taking no additional steps in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes because they say they've been on their highest state of alert since September 11th. Jean Meserve, CNN, Washington.
Well, we don't know exactly how you measure national nervousness, but we are reasonably certain it's running pretty high tonight. If every action has an equal and opposite reaction, there is plenty of reason to be concerned about the reaction, what it will be to the attacks today. We're joined now by the mayor of Salt Lake City, Rocky Anderson, mayor of Baltimore, Martin O'Malley, and the mayor of Indianapolis, Indiana, Bart Peterson. Good evening to all of you. Good evening. Mayor Anderson, let me start with you, since perhaps you have a little bit more reason to be on edge tonight. You have the whole world coming to your city in February for the Winter Games. What's it like out there? Do you have all the help you need right now? Have you ratcheted up security in the last 12, 24 hours?
Well, we have ratcheted up security. We've gone into a heightened state of alert. We have dedicated more police officers at certain buildings where we think there is a greater likelihood of some kind of retaliation from one or the other side. We want to make certain that those in our Muslim community are protected as well as everybody else in the community. And then, of course, as you mentioned, we have the Olympics coming in February 2002, and we have been in the planning, engaged in a rigorous planning for 4 years now. It's been a great collaboration between national, state, and local law enforcement. And with the meetings we had last week with Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert, the Director of the FBI, Director of Secret Service, the Attorney General, Secretary of the Army, we have received every assurance that we will be provided everything necessary to reduce the risk to an absolute minimum during those Olympic Games in Salt Lake City.
And Mayor O'Malley in Baltimore, did you have a Homeland Defense, I don't know what it would have been called, Civil Defense, Baltimore Defense, did you have a plan in place prior to September 11th, and have you changed it since?
Well, the answers to that are yes and yes. I mean, all of us had plans for, natural emergencies and hurricanes and things of that nature, but we very quickly refined our plan. We had a security consultant come in, and we looked at the city's vulnerabilities in terms of our infrastructure, not only public infrastructure, the water supply and things of that nature, but also, the bridges and the dams and the railways and the rail yards, and we have a port as well. So
were you surprised?
All of those things have gotten additional attention.
Were you surprised by anything that the security consultant told you?
Not really. I tell you, a lot of these things, some of them changed from what we initially did on September 11th. There were some things that had a higher priority for us as we, reflected on it and had more time to think about it. But, all of this is a new way of looking at all of these things. We also have a biosurveillance network in place, and we have, bioterrorism and plans now in place at all of our hospitals. And we're doing a lot more than we've ever had to do before, and I suspect there'll be more yet to come.
And Mayor Peterson in Indianapolis, the same question, is there a plan? I'm also a little bit curious about how cities are paying for all of this. I assume we have a lot of police officers on overtime these days. It gets a bit expensive. Are you having budget problems on account of all this?
Well, budget is an impact, or there is a budgetary impact to all of this, but so far it hasn't been a serious problem. We have an advantage in that we hold the 3 largest single-day sporting events in the world here in Indianapolis, the Indianapolis 500, the Brickyard 400, and now the United States Grand Prix. So we're used to security for very, very large events. We're used to mobilizing large numbers of police officers and firefighters and emergency management personnel, so that is helpful. In addition, we have a terrorism expert who's a consultant to the city and was really already available to us before September 11th. And we just had a group of our firefighters and emergency response personnel go out to ground zero less than 24 hours after the attacks on the World Trade Center. So we've got some experienced response personnel as well. It does have a budgetary impact. So far, most of that has been reimbursable expenses by the federal government. But we can't focus, we have to keep some eye on the budget, but we have to focus first and foremost on the safety and security of our citizens.
Let me ask you each very quickly, and I mean by that maybe 10, 15 seconds each. And I ask this because basically I've been in New York for the last month until today. Outside the city, how nervous, starting in Salt Lake, how nervous is the city of Salt Lake, or the citizens of Salt Lake?
Well, there's been a lot of concern expressed, but mostly focused on the February 2002 Winter Games. And I think the best thing we can try to get the people of all of our cities to do is to remain calm, understand that everybody's doing absolutely everything we can to minimize the risks.
Mayor O'Malley, how nervous are they in Baltimore?
Well, I think there's an appropriate level of anxiety and apprehension, and the way we've been able to ease that is to be able to show our citizens that we actually are taking steps on the local level with our hospitals or with our security and the other sort of preparedness and intelligence things in order to prepare for this as best we possibly can.
And in the placid Midwest, Mayor, they a little nervous in Indianapolis these days?
Sure they are, but it's the same as everywhere else, and people have a great deal of confidence in our president. They have a great deal of confidence in our local police, fire and emergency response personnel, and people are holding up very well. I'm very proud of them.
Gentlemen, all, thank you for joining us. Good to talk to you. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you. The mayors of Salt Lake, Baltimore, and Indianapolis, Indiana tonight. Jeff Greenfield and some thoughts from him after a short break. We'll be right back. When we were talking with former General Wes Clark earlier in the program, we were talking about the fact that today was a day that was fought essentially on American terms, American choice of weapons, American targets, not always going to be that easy, he said. And our colleague Jeff Greenfield in New York tonight is not about to disagree with the General. Jeff?
Nor indeed will it be easy for us, because it is, of course, the story that pulls us to our television sets. You put your countrymen into harm's way and you engage the country's hearts and minds. The Greeks knew it, Shakespeare knew it, we've known it in the United States from the days of Matthew Brady's Civil War photos to Edward R. Murrow reporting from the London rooftops in World War II, to the film and photos from Vietnam, to CNN and the Gulf War, to today's video phones and nightscopes. And so the airwaves and papers have been and will be filled with numbers and images. How many targets hit? How many sorties flown? How many planes carrying how many weapons? How many U.S. planes were hit or lost? We'll hear accounts of flyers under fire and perhaps see graphic accounts caught on videotape. And in the sheer onslaught of words and images, it is going to be very hard to remember one key fact. The real story of what is happening and its greater meaning may well not be known for weeks or months or longer. First, initial reports in combat are often incomplete or simply wrong. The first stories out of Vietnam were filled with accounts of steady progress that were flat wrong, the product of wishful thinking, or worse. The first reports from the Gulf War of our high-tech weapons vastly exaggerated their performance, it turned out. But more fundamentally, the combat reports will not and cannot tell us what we have really accomplished. If we destroy terrorist base camps, does that really lessen the danger of terrorism, or have their operations simply moved elsewhere? If the Taliban were to fall, has the U.S. already persuaded Muslim nations elsewhere to argue that the Taliban were extremists who defiled true Islam? Or will the West's adversaries paint such a fall as another struggle between Muslim and non-Muslim, fueling more rage, even suicidal, murderous rage among other zealots? And one more question for us. Are we in the media prepared to explain why and how all of these dramatic and compelling images may in fact be only a very preliminary, sketchy first chapter in a story whose major players and themes we still may not even know? We use all this, the maps and the charts and the graphics and the voices, to try to make what happened today clearer. But all of these tools, impressive as they are, cannot convey the harder and more significant story that literally has only begun. Aaron?
Jeff and Judy, jump in if you wish. It does seem to me that, at least looking at what we do for a living, we like stories that have clean beginnings, clean middles, and clean ends, and I'm not sure this one's going to have a very clean middle, and I have no clue what the end is like.
We also like stories where we can, not just we, but I think it's human nature, we want to know who the bad guys are. And so Osama bin Laden is on everybody's mind. He's in all of the papers. He's in all of the video. And we really we cannot say at this moment whether or not if Osama bin Laden were to be, as the phrase goes, taken out or rounded up or disposed of, we want to be very careful not to portray that as, okay, game over, United States won, everybody relax.
And Jeff, on the other hand, you can also argue that the media finally has some visuals to put with the story to help explain what it's all about, and particularly that compelling video today of Osama bin Laden himself.
No, I think that, in fact, is a very useful instructive for people who aren't quite sure what he's about. But, those same images, the same compelling images, particularly the ones about the wonderful, effective computer simulations of planes and where they are striking, that is a tremendously important and effective and compelling image. It may not be by far the most important part of this story, and I think that's what all of us just have to be careful as we go down this road.
One of the nice things, Jeff, about the way we're set up tonight is lots of people can come in and join. Jamie McIntyre, our military affairs correspondent, has been listening in and chomping at the bit a bit. Jamie?
Well, Aaron, I just wanted to add that I don't think that this point that Jeff makes is lost on the Pentagon. We were talking to Defense Secretary Rumsfeld on the trip, his whirlwind trip, and he said that he wanted people to understand that this war against terrorism, he thought was more like the Cold War than a hot war. He pointed out that the Cold War took 50 years to win, and it wasn't marked by any spectacular battlefield victories, but instead was a result of constant pressure from a host of nations. And then when it finally collapsed unto itself, it did so with more of a whimper than a bang. And he wants people to stop thinking about this like the Persian Gulf War or the war against Kosovo or Vietnam, and more like a very long campaign. This strike tonight was not the beginning of the end or even the end of the beginning. It's just the beginning of a very long struggle. And the Pentagon has been trying to drive home this point that it's not even primarily going to be a military campaign, and they want people to stop thinking about it the way we think about a traditional conventional war.
But Jamie, the one thing that I think is really interesting about that comparison, which has already drawn some critique from historians, is the one thing about the Cold War is you knew who was on the other side. It was a nation state with hegemonistic impulses. It was the Soviet Union and its allies. I'm not even sure we know who's on the other side to that extent on this one. And so all I'm saying is those pictures are dramatic, and I take your point, Jamie, but I think it may even be more complicated than just that.
Jamie, Jeff, I'm going to stop you both here. We'll take a break and whip around the world and look at the events in Afghanistan as they unfold this morning and elsewhere in just a moment. Coming up on 20 minutes past 11 in the east. It's sometime after 7:30 in Afghanistan, and here is the latest in what clearly now is America's new war. The sun has risen in a very different Afghanistan, different from it was on Sunday morning, to be sure. This is a nation that has been under siege and at war with itself for a long time, but today it is also a country under attack and up against the most powerful military in the world, the Americans. The U.S. and British airstrikes began just as many Americans were sitting down to watch Sunday football, and just as night fell on Afghanistan, bombs and cruise missiles landed from one end of the country to another, targeting airfields, anti-aircraft sites, and suspected training camps for the terrorists of Osama bin Laden. We could learn more in the coming hours how successful these first airstrikes were. Indeed, the Pentagon may already know. And at home, a warning that today's action may have a deadly reaction. The FBI is telling law enforcement officers across the country, get ready for the worst. At airports, in cities, and around official places, security that was tight is now tighter and much more visible. We know now that Secretary of State Powell is heading off to India and Pakistan at the end of the week. He's been busy pulling a coalition together against terrorism. Now he'll focus on equally hard work, holding it together. And at Ground Zero in New York tonight, there is no pause in the work. The crews on the scene continue to do their job, their contribution to America's new war. Quickly now, we want to check with correspondents in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Washington. Quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with Kamal Haider in Afghanistan. Kamal.
Yes, Aaron, Kandahar basically is now confirming that only the office of Mullah Omar and the airport was hit. There is no confirmation from Jalalabad and Kabul as to what were the intended targets, but that there was some loss of life in Kabul. Aaron?
Thank you, Kamal. Those are very precise hits. If, in fact, they hit those two spots, that's clearly what they were aiming for. In Islamabad, Pakistan, morning has come. The papers are out. Reaction has started. CNN's Christiane Amanpour is there. Christiane.
Well, just in case nobody saw it last night, they're certainly waking up this morning to hear that U.S. allies attack Afghanistan. This, of course, was going to be the jumping-off point to judge what the reaction will be here in Pakistan. Pakistan, a very key player in this and key to the coalition. We're going to hear from President Musharraf in less than 2 hours from now at a press conference, and hopefully we'll have more detail as to how he assesses what went on and what will go on in the future here in Pakistan. Aaron?
Christiane, thank you. It's going to be a fascinating day to watch unfold there. Fascinating, too, in northern Afghanistan, where the Northern Alliance holds its 10% share of the country. Chris Burns is there for us. Chris?
Aaron, well, an impressive 6-hour blitz we watched from here, between here and Kabul. We saw bright flashes of light, some of the explosions that shook the air. This was a coordinated effort between the Northern Alliance firing its Katyusha rockets and heavy artillery at the same time that the coalition was launching its airstrikes. Other points in the north also, three air bases in 3 cities were also struck in an effort to soften the Taliban defenses to allow the Northern Alliance to advance, especially Mazar-e-Sharif. That is the northern town, the stronghold of the Taliban. Now, at this point, there's a lot of BDA going on, bomb damage assessment, by the Northern Alliance to see if they can now advance on those positions, and that is what they're hoping they can do in the coming days. Aaron?
Chris, thanks. That's the picture in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Judy, take us through Washington.
Well, Aaron, the nerve center for all this, of course, is at the Pentagon here in Washington. And for the very latest from there, let's go to our military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Again, Jamie.
Well, bomb damage assessment also going on here. The Pentagon making use of overhead imagery from both spy planes and spy satellites as they assess the effectiveness of the first day of the raids. They will be briefing here at the Pentagon tomorrow, including some satellite pictures of some of the damage. And the Pentagon says that the bombing is not over. The Taliban should not rest easy at this hour. Judy?
All right, Jamie, thanks for that. And scoot directly now to the White House. Kelly Wallace, we don't know if the president's gone to sleep yet, but he certainly had a full day and deserves some rest.
And determined, telling aides during a lunch after addressing the nation the importance of continuing to communicate to the American people this will be a different kind of war. Look for us to see the president for the first time on Monday swearing in former Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge as the new director of Homeland Security. A senior administration official telling me the administration wants to communicate to the American people that Ridge will have the clout and the authority to get the job done. Judy?
All right, Kelly Wallace reporting from the White House. And now for the latest on the diplomatic front here in Washington, our State Department correspondent, Andrea Koppel. Andrea.
Judy, diplomacy was important even before the strikes began in trying to build a broad-based coalition. Now that they've happened, administration officials say tonight diplomacy will become even more important in the days and weeks and months ahead, especially within the Arab world and Muslim world, to try to keep the coalition together. For that reason, Secretary Powell worked the phones throughout the day today, reaching out to world leaders in South Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Central America, trying to get a dual message out there. That being, on the one hand, these strikes today were against legitimate military targets, whether it be al-Qaeda training camps or whether it be Taliban infrastructure. On the other hand, saying that the U.S. is trying to avoid any Afghan civilian casualties, while at the same time trying to send them millions of dollars in aid and humanitarian effects. And as well, the administration saying that Secretary Powell is going to be traveling not only to Pakistan to try to shore up support for Pervez Musharraf, the president there, but as well to India, that later in the week, trying to keep those two very delicate relationships on balance. Judy?
All right, Andrea Koppel. So it looks here in Washington, Aaron, as if people not only looking back at what happened today, but very much looking ahead.
Time to look forward. We checked European reaction now. The British, of course, involved in the strike today. The French and the Germans indicating they would supply military support if requested. CNN's Robin Oakley is in London tonight, I gather, with reaction from Europe. Robin.
There's been no great surprise, Aaron, among the European Union nations or the 18 other members of NATO alongside the United States. The way has been prepared diplomatically. Many of the European leaders were given phone calls warning them of what lay ahead. And in general, the feeling has been that expressed by Britain's Prime Minister Tony Blair when he said that the Taliban had been given a choice between justice and terrorism. They had chosen terrorism, and action then was inevitable. When they last met in Brussels, September the 21st, the European Union's leaders agreed that America had every right to make a riposte, as they put it, against terrorism. Now it's come to military action, they've reiterated their entire solidarity. British Prime Minister Tony Blair insisted that the UK, already involved in the action, was a peace-loving country which understands peace sometimes must be fought for.
We only do it if the cause is just. But this cause is just. The murder of almost 7,000 innocent people in America was an attack on our freedom, our way of life, an attack on civilized values the world over. We waited so that those responsible could be yielded up by those shielding them. That offer was refused. We have now no choice. So we will act, and our determination in acting is total.
In Paris, the French President Jacques Chirac said his country's ships were already involved and that French troops would take part in what was going to be a long operation.
The fight against terrorism is a complex and difficult one. It has to be fought on several fronts, as well as military action to destroy those terrorist camps in Afghanistan. We must also work together to bring down terrorist networks all around the world, with greater international cooperation at the level of intelligence gathering, police work, financial information. For this action, the French are united. We are all united.
Germany's Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, too, promised military assistance if it was sought from his country.
Germany will, as will France, contribute in the continuation of this operation as soon as it is requested in concrete terms and according to our capabilities.
Russia's President Putin, celebrating his 49th birthday, was telephoned by President Bush in advance of the strikes on Afghanistan. The Russian Foreign Ministry backed the action, saying all means must be used to fight terrorism. Endorsements rolled in from many quarters, including Turkey, the only NATO country with a predominantly Muslim population. Italy promised help when it was needed later. There were common themes in the responses across Europe from the various leaders. All of them insisted that this wasn't a war against Islam. All of them said there was no quarrel with the Afghan people. Most of them acknowledged the fears of their own people, but they said failing to act against terrorism would have been worse than getting involved in the battle against terrorism. Aaron.
Everybody in their respective languages seems to be echoing what the President of the United States has been saying now since September 11th. The message is very consistent. Robin, have you had a chance to see the morning papers there? I'm always interested to know how the headlines are playing events.
Indeed, one or two, Aaron, we've got in, although it's only 4:30 in the morning here. There's some papers circulating. Of the red-top tabloids, the Daily Mirror here in London simply headlines it, "Attack. Allies blitz on bin Laden. He vows deadly revenge." 7 hours of bombing they talk of inside. The Sun, another of the popular tabloids, "Blitz. US and Britain launch huge missile attack on the Taliban." And the Times of London, "The battle is joined." Aaron.
Robin, thanks. The battle indeed is joined. Judy?
Well, Aaron, Israel's Defense Minister Shimon Peres has said that Israel was fully behind the U.S. in regard to today's strikes. And now to talk a little bit more about Israel's position, we are joined by the Israeli Consul General in New York, Elan Pincus. Mr. Pincus, Israel is accustomed to being in the middle of conflict. How does this endeavor look from where you sit?
Well, Judy, Shimon Peres is Israel's foreign minister, not defense minister, but he was also defense minister. No, that's okay. He was also the defense minister, so it's really no harm done. From our point of view, this is a necessary, unavoidable step that is part and parcel of this campaign. There is no way of eradicating terrorism, of combating it in a comprehensive, profound, and serious way, which means the long haul and the sustained campaign that everyone's been talking about in the last 2-3 weeks, without the military component. I think that what we saw today is part of that military component, although, and I think that many of the pundits that were here throughout the day have indicated correctly that this is by no means will look like the 1991 war against Iraq. It just seems like it for the first day. It will not be anything similar to it.
Your Prime Minister Ariel Sharon just a few days ago made comments in effect accusing the United States of appeasing or attempting to appease the Arab states. Is there some friction now in the relationship between Israel and the United States?
No, there's no friction, and perhaps, Judy, I'll take this opportunity and clarify. Israel is a Western liberal democracy, as is Britain, as is the United States of America. And we all look up to the United States of America as the leader of the free world, and I don't mean this as a cliche. Which is why when this war on terrorism has been announced and declared and the coalition has begun to be constructed, we thought that at the forefront of this coalition will be the liberal democracies of the world. We found out, and that is the context in which you need to look at what the Prime Minister said. We found out that in terms of the ad hoc short-term coalition, some countries with dubious credentials have been courted. Now, if you look at Iran or Syria,
you mean courted by the United States?
Courted not just by the United States, but by analysts and pundits and the U.S. and Britain, and the conventional wisdom or the conventional wisdom that evolved was that you need these people on your side. Now, we have no problem with that, far from it. We understand the intricacies and we understand the necessity and we understand the constraints under which we all operate. However, you're looking at some countries such as Iran and Syria, and this is really not the story tonight, but I'm saying this just to clarify what Prime Minister Sharon said. You're looking at the problem, not at the solution. And what he said 2 days ago was, beware, you're appeasing people that may come back to haunt all of us.
You're right. This is not the story tonight, but I did want to raise it because it was uppermost in the minds of many. Just quickly to a comment from Osama bin Laden in that videotape released today where he said Israeli tanks, in his words, and this is a rough translation, infest Palestine, and he named several places. He said, this is the land of Islam, and we don't hear anyone raising his voice or moving a limb, clearly trying to use that as a justification for what happened.
I think it's total and utter nonsense. I mean, he's doing the same thing that Saddam Hussein tried to do in 1991, and that is broaden this into an Arab world versus the West kind of conflict. And nothing is more convenient, however ludicrous, but nothing is more convenient than to pull Israel into the fray. He has said before that the problem he has is with the United States defiling and contaminating the holy land of Islam, i.e. Saudi Arabia. And the Israeli-Palestinian issue has nothing to do with it. In fact, Judy, when the attacks of September 11th were planned, we were in the midst of a peace process. So really, to assume that this man, this maniac is serious and to take him seriously is not doing justice to the truth.
Israel's Consul General in New York, Elan Pincus, thank you very much.
My pleasure,
we appreciate
Judy.
it.
My
Aaron.
pleasure.
Well, as we go to break here, I want to take a quick look at Al Jazeera television. This is television in the Middle East. The reason we want to do this, and perhaps we're a bit late, is they were running pictures of the American bombing runs, the B-2s, the B-52s, dropping their payload. It was file tape. In any case, that is what people were seeing in the Middle East. One of the reasons we go to Al Jazeera is it's important for us to understand what people in the region are being told. They carried the president's speech today, they carried Tony Blair's speech, the Rumsfeld press conference. Their audience got a fairly good look at all sides of this today, including the war effort just recently. We have much more coming up. We'll be right back.
CNN's Christiane Amanpour has been reporting on the U.S.-led strikes from Islamabad, Pakistan throughout this day. She has reaction now from that country and also the main target of today's military action, Afghanistan's Taliban rulers.
Air and cruise missile strikes hit targets around several major cities in Afghanistan, causing civilians to flee, according to CNN sources inside the country. They also tell CNN that airfields, air defenses, and command centers were struck. In an unprecedented move, the U.S. also began a humanitarian airdrop to Afghan civilians. The Taliban's first angry reaction came from its ambassador to Pakistan, who accused the United States